Abril Perez Saga entered the world in 1971, nestled in the vibrant city of Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico. Born to Maria del Socorro Sagaon, Abril was raised alongside her two siblings, Javier and Annie. From a young age, her mother tirelessly ensured that all three children received the best education possible, fostering an environment of security and opportunity. Abril, showing an innate knack for entrepreneurship and learning, aimed high with aspirations of attaining higher education and economic independence, setting her sights on a life of comfort and achievement. As she matured, Abril blossomed into a disciplined, intelligent, and vivacious individual. Known for her kindness and compassion, she was always eager to lend a helping hand, winning the hearts of many. Her leadership skills and outgoing nature not only made her a role model among her peers, but also paved her way to becoming a distinguished professional. She achieved academic excellence with a bachelor's degree from the University of Nuevo León, and further honed her skills with a master's in business from the Science and Technology Institute of Monterrey. Her career trajectory took a significant leap forward when she ventured into the digital sales arena, quickly climbing the ranks to secure a key executive role at the Bilbao Vizcaya Bank of America in the early 1990s. It was during this zenith of her career that Abril's path crossed with Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez, an ambitious entrepreneur born on November 11, 1968. The two shared more than just a professional background. Juan Carlos, too, was an alumnus of the Science and Technology Institute of Monterrey, graduating with honors in economics. His academic journey also included stints at prestigious U.S. institutions like the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard. Describing himself as a fervent entrepreneur in e-commerce and financial technology, Juan Carlos's passion was palpable. Their shared interests in social circles brought them closer, and they often collaborated on various projects. As their professional relationship flourished, so did their personal connection, blossoming into love. After several years together, they decided to tie the knot in 1994, a union that not only solidified their relationship but also their professional collaborations. They achieved success with ventures like the online stores Pagam Mobile and Plaza.com, and played a pivotal role in founding the Decompress store, which by 1999 had become one of Mexico's top e-commerce platforms. As we explore the remarkable journey of Abril and Juan Carlos, one can't help but wonder about the synergy between personal and professional growth. What do you think contributes more to their success? Shared professional interests or personal compatibility? The couple's life appeared to be a dream come true. Both were thriving in their careers and delighted to work and live alongside each other. Their happiness reached new heights in 2001 when they welcomed their first daughter, Ana Cecilia. 2 years later, their joy expanded with the birth of their son, Juan Carlos Jr. And in 2005, they completed their family with another son, Julio Andres. Despite Abril's demanding career and numerous work commitments, she always made sure to be present in her children's lives. She took an active role in their upbringing, attending to their needs, participating in school plays, and being there for their assemblies. Those around Abril admired her, often describing her as the perfect mother. Similarly, many believed Juan Carlos was an exemplary father. They were seen as the ideal family, with many wishing they could trade places with him. However, this image was merely a facade. Behind closed doors, the family was enduring a tumultuous period, with everyone suffering from Juan's explosive temper. Juan was an irritable and quick-tempered man who often lashed out at anyone nearby. Initially, it began with verbal abuse. Juan made Abril feel uncomfortable with his hurtful remarks, deeply offending her. Over time, the situation escalated to physical violence, with Juan regularly beating Abril. She tried to conceal this abuse from her friends and family, believing that staying with Juan Carlos was in the best interest of her children. Abril feared she wouldn't be able to provide for her children on her own, so she chose not to leave her husband. By 2009, the situation had deteriorated so much that people around Abril began to suspect something was wrong. Friends and family noticed her depressed demeanor and the bruises on her body. Despite their concerns and pleas for her to divorce Juan, Abril steadfastly insisted on staying with her family. By 2014, Juan Carlos had achieved remarkable success in his career, being named one of the most important figures in Amazon's commerce in Mexico. A year later, his promotion to Amazon's Director of Operations in Mexico necessitated the family's move to Mexico City. Abril hoped that relocating would help resolve their issues, But unfortunately, it did not. Despite the change in scenery, her husband's abusive behavior persisted. He insulted and physically assaulted her nearly every day. Juan Carlos maintained a starkly different public persona, presenting himself as a devoted husband and father, concerned with preserving his good reputation. He frequently shared posts on social media, declaring April as the love of his life, yet paradoxically, he was obsessively suspicious of her, going as far as to hire a private detective to monitor her under the baseless accusation of infidelity. Simultaneously, Juan Carlos's professional life thrived. He secured a prestigious role as the director of digital commerce at Electra, a multinational company specializing in commerce and financial services. By 2018, the domestic strife had escalated to an intolerable level. Despite April's efforts to maintain her family's unity, a distressing incident during a Christmas holiday trip to Monterey with her family brought her to a breaking point. In a senseless fit of rage, Juan Carlos accused her of cheating again, based on an innocuous photo sent by the private investigator showing April with a male colleague. In his unfounded jealousy, he attempted to strangle her. This alarming episode pushed April towards deciding to leave him for good, a decision cemented by January 4, 2019, when they were discussing how to break the news of their impending divorce to their children. That fateful morning, the situation took a violent turn. April was awoken by a severe blow to the head, initially mistaking it for an accident, only to realize Juan Carlos had struck her with a baseball bat. In her desperate attempt to escape, her screams alerted their eldest son, then 16, who rushed to her aid. His timely intervention saved her life. Together they escaped the house, seeking immediate medical attention for April's severe injuries. This harrowing account not only sheds light on the destructive effects of domestic abuse, but also underscores the importance of recognizing early warning signs and taking preventive measures to protect oneself and loved ones. Through understanding the complexities of abusive relationships and the legal avenues for protection, we aim to educate and empower individuals to safeguard their safety and well-being. After the traumatic events unfolded, while his wife Abril and their son were recovering in the hospital, Juan Carlos turned to social media to vent his frustrations. He published several posts in which he accused April of infidelity and financial deceit, alleging she had stolen from him throughout their 26-year marriage. More shockingly, he claimed she had stabbed him in the chest, supporting his accusations with photos of a knife and bloodstains. These posts garnered the attention of his friends, one of whom even made a video to help spread Juan Carlos's side of the story. Among these already bizarre posts, he went a step further, bizarrely announcing April's death from his own account, although she was clearly alive, raising questions about his motives. After her hospital release, April took immediate legal action against Juan Carlos. She filed a police report, and quickly, the courts awarded her custody of their children. Despite their oldest daughter being legally an adult and capable of independence, she chose to stay with her mother. The courts ordered Juan Carlos to pay a monthly child support of 6,000 Mexican pesos, around $350, an amount insufficient for the upbringing of 2 minors. Faced with financial hurdles and lingering fear of her husband, April embraced this challenging new chapter with unwavering optimism, focusing on her children's well-being. Relocating to Monterey with her children, April actively pursued the lawsuit against Juan Carlos and finalized their divorce. The relentless abuse she endured reshaped her outlook, leading her to join a Christian group aimed at family protection and start working as a divorce counselor. Her plans included founding an organization to aid abused women, helping them heal as she did, eventually reaching a point of forgiveness towards her ex-husband. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Juan Carlos intensified. 9 months post-attack on September 20th, a criminal case for attempted feminicide was lodged against him. The overseeing judge, Federico Moscow, issued an informal pre-trial detention, sending him to the northern prison for several weeks. Juan Carlos contested these decisions, leading to a judicial re-evaluation on November 3, 2019, by the original presiding judge. Subsequently, another judge, Hector Jimenez, reconsidered the reclassification of the crime. Despite evidence including April's hospital photos and testimony from her and her son, the judge ruled out attempted feminicide, arguing Juan Carlos lacked lethal intent as evidenced by the non-fatal nature of the attack. This led to the cancellation of the remand and left the remaining hearings shrouded in uncertainty. Distraught by these developments, April penned a letter to the judge expressing her fear for her life, though it went unanswered and Juan Carlos remained free. As we delve deeper into this complex narrative, one has to wonder about the justice system's role and its impact on victims like April. After being released from prison, a man began a legal battle for custody of his two young children. This situation compelled April to make frequent trips from Monterrey to Mexico City to attend numerous court hearings. Additionally, she was required to take her children to several psychological evaluations. In his lawsuit, Juan alleged that April had poisoned the children's minds against him, claiming this as the reason they readily chose to leave him. Just 1 week before a crucial hearing, April sat down with her 3 children for a heartfelt conversation. She encouraged them to chase their dreams and find it within themselves to forgive, subtly hinting at their estranged father. This discussion seemed to be a forewarning, as if April sensed an impending tragedy, and she seized the moment to express her profound love for them one last time. On November 25, 2019, April traveled to Mexico City for what was to be a pivotal meeting. Coincidentally, that day marked the International Day Against Gender Violence, with thousands of women protesting in the streets. Tragically, following the court session, 48-year-old April was fatally shot in the south of the city. After the hearing, April and her children, along with their attorney, were en route to the airport in a car, ready to return to Monterrey after fulfilling all legal obligations. At a red traffic light, their car was approached by a motorcyclist. Shockingly, the rider was an assassin who fired 2 shots at April, striking her in the head, while her children miraculously remained unharmed in the back seat. April was critically injured but alive when she arrived at the hospital. Despite the medical team's best efforts, she succumbed to her injuries 6 hours later. Her legal advisor promptly informed her family of the tragedy, leading her brother Javier to urgently travel to Mexico City to handle the aftermath. This chilling episode highlights the stark realities and dangers that can emerge from custody disputes and domestic issues, serving as a grim chapter in a true crime documentary on the tragic consequences of familial conflicts and systemic violence against women. In the tragic narrative surrounding Juan Carlos, many were convinced of his involvement in a heinous act, yet the official stance diverged sharply. Law enforcement authorities contended that without clear identification of the shooter and his motives, they couldn't categorize the incident as feminicide, leaving Juan Carlos unarrested and the case classified merely as murder. This classification prompted the police to delve deeper, aiming to amass sufficient evidence to potentially reclassify the crime as feminicide. Amidst this turmoil, a friend of the victim, April, voiced her accusations against Juan Carlos on social media. This bold move resulted in the deletion of her account, further igniting the fear among April's relatives that justice might elude them. They too turned to social media, striving to spotlight the case, particularly poignant as April's death coincided with a day dedicated to combating gender-based violence, thus imbuing her demise with profound significance. The grief-stricken family organized numerous protests and marches advocating for justice for April. The online community rallied around these efforts, sparking vigorous discussions about April's previously expressed fears and the authorities' apparent disregard for her pleas for protection. Amid a backdrop of sorrow and disillusionment, April's loved ones conducted her funeral in Monterrey at the Benio Flores Chapel with a heartfelt requiem mass. During this solemn event, mourners not only paid their respects but also raised vocal demands for justice. The funeral procession later made its way to the Pantheon Garden in Los Angeles for the burial, turning the occasion into a powerful statement against gender violence. This was underscored by the frustrating reality that some perpetrators of violence against women had been acquitted by the courts. Notably, April's ex-husband Juan Carlos had been released from prison following appeals and had managed to bring her to Mexico City, where tragically, nothing prevented him from ending her life. In a recent escalation surrounding a high-profile legal debacle in Mexico, the Attorney General's office has initiated a comprehensive investigation against Judges Carlos Trillo Rodriguez, Federico Mosco Gonzalez, and Hector Jimenez Lopez. The scrutiny stems from their controversial rulings that prematurely freed Juan Carlos, a businessman entangled in severe allegations. This move comes amid public uproar and a push from representatives of former Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's party within the Chamber of Deputies, advocating for the ousting of Judge Mosco. Mosco had previously sparked controversy by discharging a doctor from charges of violence against a woman in a separate case, resulting only in an accusation of sexual assault. Amid the tumult of the so-called Abril case, Rafael Gara, the president of the Supreme Court of Mexico City, suspended all judges connected to Juan Carlos's release on November 29th. Subsequently, Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico City's head of government, announced the reinvestigation of Abril's tragic demise as a feminicide, suggesting that the implicated judges could face repercussions should evidence prove Juan Carlos as the perpetrator. The case, which has attracted both local and international media attention, revealed that despite compelling evidence against him, the judiciary system released Juan Carlos. In response to the public outcry following Abril's death, her family founded a non-profit named Abril's Voice. This organization aims to provide essential support, legal, psychological, and informational, to those affected by similar acts of violence. Furthermore, public demonstrations have prompted calls for the legal reclassification of the charges against Juan Carlos to attempted murder of women, potentially leading to his rearrest. Adding to the controversy, Juan Carlos himself has taken to social media to declare his willingness to aid the ongoing investigation, asserting his innocence in his wife's tragic fate, despite acknowledging marital discord. His statements have been met with widespread skepticism and dismay across the community. Compounding the family's turmoil, Ana Cecilia, Juan Carlos's 18-year-old daughter, has accused him of long-term physical and psychological maltreatment towards Abril and their children. She substantiated her claims with harrowing images of Abril hospitalized following an assault. Ana Cecilia's poignant accusations paint her father as a narcissistic sociopath whose temporary freedom was allegedly secured through corrupt dealings. This saga, fit for a true crime documentary, continues to unravel, exposing the deep-seated issues within judicial systems and the pervasive challenges victims face in their quest for justice. In the days following a turbulent series of events, authorities finally issued an arrest warrant for Juan Carlos. Interestingly, the warrant wasn't related to the murder case of Abril, which had gripped public attention, but was due to his failure to adhere to court obligations. Juan Carlos had been conditionally released with the mandate to check in weekly, a condition he neglected. Additionally, he was absent from 2 crucial court hearings, prompting Judge Austin Moreno Gaspar to rescind the release order. During one of these missed hearings, a poignant moment occurred when the judge read aloud a letter from Juan Carlos. In this letter, he expressed a deep fear for his safety, claiming this as the reason for his absence. He stated that since the tragic demise of Abril, both he and his loved ones had been the targets of severe death threats. Juan Carlos believed that attending the hearing would expose him to potential acts of vengeance. He also maintained his innocence in the letter, asserting that his conscience was clear regarding Abril's death. Despite his claims, Judge Gaspar was not persuaded and thus issued the arrest warrant, also imposing a travel ban on Juan. As this legal drama unfolded, the probe into Abril's death pressed on, with authorities more determined than ever to uncover the full truth. Amidst this investigation, a letter Juan Carlos had written to the authorities was leaked to the media. In it, he vehemently denied any involvement in Abril's death. He recounted the events of that fateful morning, claiming that it was Abril who first escalated their conflict by stabbing him with a knife. According to Juan, his retaliatory strike with a bat was his first act of resistance, and he vehemently denied any intent to kill her. This letter sparked widespread outrage and skepticism. Despite Juan's narrative, the investigation solidified his status as the prime suspect in Abril's murder, also revealing the involvement of at least 7 other individuals in the crime. The complexities of this case raise numerous questions. What do you think about Juan Carlos's claims of self-defense? Do you believe his fear of attending the hearing was genuine, or a strategic maneuver to evade legal repercussions? How do you interpret the involvement of multiple suspects in this case? Share your thoughts and theories below. After closely examining surveillance footage from the area where the tragic events unfolded, it became evident that as soon as the woman exited the courthouse, 2 cars immediately pursued her. The drivers of these cars were coordinating with the hitman who executed the fatal shot. Surveillance videos captured the hitman and the 2 vehicles hastily retreating to a medics colony in Mexico City following the assault. At that stage, the identities of the pursuers and the hitman remained unknown, yet the ongoing investigation suggested Juan Carlos's possible involvement in the orchestration of the crime. It was hypothesized that Juan Carlos had encountered these men during his time in prison, paying one of them for protection. After their release, and subsequently his own, it is believed he compensated them to murder Abril. Crucially, Juan Carlos alone was privy to the precise itinerary of Abril's movements within Mexico City, as he had orchestrated the scheduling of their meetings and court appearances. Upon these revelations, no legal team was prepared to defend him. Furthermore, Abril's relatives, friends, and colleagues cooperated fully with law enforcement, providing extensive information to facilitate his capture. Nevertheless, developments took a dramatic turn when it was disclosed by sources within the country's Attorney General's office that Juan Carlos had fled Mexico. He reportedly escaped by crossing into the United States. In response, Mexican authorities promptly alerted Interpol, which issued a global notification. Consequently, Juan Carlos became a target for law enforcement across over 151 countries, with a concerted effort to apprehend him at any cost. Progress in the Abril case was painstakingly slow, with the first arrests only occurring months later. On March 5, 2020, Mexico's Secretary General of Security, Omar Garcia Haro, announced the arrest of 2 individuals linked to the incident. The detainees were Juan Carlos Rodriguez Ortiz and Rodolfo Daniel B. Dara Sandal, also known as Chango Leon. Rodriguez Ortiz was identified as the driver who effectively shielded the hitman, while Dara Sandal was pinpointed as the shooter. Both were subsequently charged as suspects in the case. In a chilling chapter of a true crime documentary, the arrest of 2 individuals 7 months following initial detentions unfolded dramatically. The ongoing investigation revealed the sinister network led by Juan Carlos Maldonado, known as Juan Balta, a notorious gang leader in Mexico City. On October 28th, authorities closed in on 2 more of Balta's associates, Oscar, nicknamed El Oso, and Alejandro, known as El Carnal. During the arrest, police discovered 182 doses of cocaine in El Oso's possession at his residence, along with 300 rounds of large-caliber ammunition, a firearm, and 9 bags of illicit substances. Meanwhile, El Carnal was apprehended with his 33-year-old mistress, Magda Carina. Their capture yielded 3 bags of illegal substances, a firearms magazine, a long gun, and a scale for measuring drugs, highlighting the depth of their criminal activities. The backstory of violence and betrayal deepened with revelations from the judiciary. Juan Carlos, another central figure, had previously orchestrated an assault on his ex-wife, Abril, using a bat, a crime for which he was initially released due to judicial oversight. However, the relentless pursuit of justice by Abril's relatives led to the re-evaluation of his case. After substantial public outcry and protests, the Judicial Council took action against the judges who had allowed his early release, temporarily suspending them from their duties. As the case continued to unravel, it emerged that Juan Carlos and Juan Balta had formed a formidable alliance in prison. Balta, offering protection in exchange for financial support, continued to receive funds from Juan Carlos after their release. This dark alliance was believed to have led to the plotting against Abril's life, marking a sinister turn in the narrative. The culmination of these efforts by law enforcement and judicial authorities came on March 19, 2021, when a judge overturned previous rulings on the January 2019 attack on Abril, reclassifying it as attempted murder. This significant judicial shift came after intense advocacy by her relatives and persistent petitions from the prosecutor's office, emphasizing the severity of the crime and the need for accountability in the harrowing saga of criminality and corruption. 2 months later, on May 23rd, the authorities apprehended the final suspects in the murder case of Abril. The operation led to the arrest of 3 women and 1 man. The judge had issued 3 search warrants and 8 arrest warrants that morning. A statement released jointly by the Ministry of Civil Security detailed the arrests. In the first raid, 48-year-old Amato Vente Rodriguez was taken into custody. Found in his possession were a short-barreled firearm, 2 magazines, 73 functional cartridges, 9 cell phones, 53 assorted watches, various pieces of jewelry, computers, cash, counterfeit passports, Idaho cards, driver's licenses, phone chips, and a plastic bag containing illegal substances. During a subsequent search at the Garden de Morelos colony, authorities arrested 34-year-old Mabel Montiel Moreno and, at a different site, 48-year-old Graciela Alicia Flores Valdez. Both women had multiple cell phones confiscated. The latest arrest occurred at Florida Mayor Alvaro Oberon's colony in Mexico City, where 50-year-old Aisha Jalil Castillo, also known as Aguera or Alvar's godmother, was detained. By this time, 9 gang members had been captured, 7 of whom were directly linked to Abril's murder. The only individual still at large was Juan Carlos, prompting authorities to issue a renewed public alert. Attorney General Ernestina Godoy stated that the initial alert was for attempted feminicide, but now a new alert was issued following the confirmation of Abril's murder. However, despite intensive search efforts, months elapsed without any sign of Juan. During this period, an unexpected turn occurred when a man known as Rulo, also called El Chango Leon, came forward to the authorities. Under interrogation, he confessed to being the actual perpetrator who fatally shot Abril. He revealed that he was compelled to commit the murder after Juan Carlos offered him $110,000. According to Rulo, Juan Carlos orchestrated the murder from behind bars, providing Rulo with Abril's address and detailed instructions for the crime while still in pre-trial detention. Juan Carlos had informed Rulo that the necessary weapons would be available in Monterrey. Rulo traveled there in anticipation, but after several days without any contact, he returned to Mexico City, having not heard anything further about the weapons or from Juan Carlos until after the latter's release from prison. Once out, Juan Carlos reached out to Rulo again, altering the initial plan. He now insisted that Abril's life be taken in Mexico City, having managed to lure her there himself. What do you think about the twisted paths this case took? In a charged courtroom setting, the family lawyer of Abril posed a significant question to El Chango Leon, alias Rodolfo Daniel Banderas, during his interrogation. "Do you have anything to say to the victim's family?" he asked. El Chango Leon, remorseful, admitted his guilt and extended his apologies to his own family members, including his brothers and sons. In an intriguing twist, Juan Carlos Rodriguez Ortiz disclosed he was paid 5,000 Mexican pesos, approximately $300, by a man named Juan Carlos, even before the details of the crime were laid out to him. Due to procedural limitations within the metropolitan court system, the case was fragmented into separate hearings. The initial trial targeted only the direct perpetrators, Rodolfo Daniel Banderas and Juan Carlos Rodriguez, with future proceedings planned for the other accused. The legal proceedings began in August 2022. Throughout the trial, the prosecution brought forward 28 witnesses and introduced 14 pieces of expert evidence. El Chango Leon recounted his meticulous planning and execution of the crime during the trial, reaffirming his guilty plea. On May 19, 2023, the verdict was delivered. Both Rodolfo Daniel Banderas and Juan Carlos Rodriguez were convicted of feminicide and sentenced to 52 years in prison. Additionally, they were ordered to compensate with 560,000 Mexican pesos, around $3,200. Following the sentencing, they were transported to the Oriente Detention Center to begin their sentences. The aftermath of the trial saw Abril's family voicing dissatisfaction with the sentence for Rulo, who was the actual shooter. They vowed to appeal, seeking a harsher penalty. Meanwhile, in October 2014, a decision to conduct separate trials for 4 other defendants, Juan Carlos Maldonado, Juan Balta, Alejandro, El Carnal, Amad Vente Rodriguez, and Graciela Alicia Flores, was made. This decision, later appealed by prosecutors, was criticized for potentially causing delays and incurring excessive costs, as each defendant would need to appear in court multiple times. As of January 2024, no new sentencing updates have emerged. It's been 4 years since Abril's tragic death, and the pursuit of justice continues. Her children, now residing with their uncles on the outskirts of Mexico City, remain hopeful for justice. Amidst these ongoing legal battles, one question lingers heavily in the air. Where is Juan Carlos, the alleged mastermind? His capture remains a crucial task for the authorities. Abril's family, steadfast in their resolve, pledges to continue their quest for justice until he is apprehended and convicted. What are your thoughts on the justice system's handling of this case? Do you think the separate trials for the defendants are justified, or do they undermine the pursuit of justice? Thank you for joining us as we delved into the complex and heart-wrenching story of Abril Perez Saga. Today's episode highlighted not only the personal tragedy of Abril, but also shed light on broader systemic issues within our criminal justice and societal norms. As we reflect on the challenges faced by Abril and the myriad victims of domestic abuse who suffer in silence, it is crucial for us to understand the mechanisms of the law, the intricacies of criminal behavior, and the power of community awareness in preventing such tragedies. Educating ourselves and others about the signs of abuse, the legal rights of the victims, and the available resources for help can make a substantial difference. How might our community better support individuals trapped in cycles of violence? What steps can be taken to improve the responsiveness of our legal system to these urgent situations? On March 6, 2024, the Wickramasinghe family woke up to a day filled with anticipation for a fun family gathering. However, as dusk falls, their dreams are brutally shattered by a horrifying serial murder that shocks the entire country. What could cause someone to commit such a brutal act? Are there dark shadows lurking in this family's seemingly perfect life? Come along with us as we unravel the layers of this tragic event. Explore the strange occurrences that occurred on that terrifying night, the gruesome discoveries at the crime scene, and the investigation tension ensued. Prepare to delve into the depths of human depravity with the disturbing story of the Wickramasinghe family, a story that is sure to linger in your mind. Now let us focus on the key character in this story, Danushka Wickramasinghe, a man with ambitions and dreams. Born and raised in Sri Lanka, he excelled in school and landed a prestigious position at a major mobile company. However, despite having a stable job, Danushka still yearns for greater opportunities and a brighter future for her family. In July 2021, he took a bold leap, moving to Canada and leaving behind his wife, Darshani, and their 3 children, Inuka, Ashwini, and Ranaya. Settling in Ottawa has its own challenges, including financial difficulties and cultural adjustment. However, Danushka's persistence led to the creation of a successful cleaning company, finally allowing him to reunite with his family in early 2023 after many years apart. What do you think could compel someone to disrupt such a difficult, peaceful existence with an act of extreme violence? Join us as we dig deeper into the motives and secrets that may lie behind this tragic story. Darshani, a former educator, welcomed their new beginning with unwavering optimism and commitment. The family's happiness was further enhanced when their youngest daughter, Kelly, arrived in Ottawa. Together, they deftly navigate the complexities of their pristine surroundings, bound together by love and a resolute ambition to thrive. However, their aspirations were suddenly and cruelly destroyed, leaving the community in grief and causing the entire nation to lose faith. Danushka Wickramasinghe's move to Canada was motivated by a desire to create a brighter future for her relatives. The early years were challenging, marked by intense labor and solitude, but Danushka remained laser-focused on her ambitions. He enrolled at a local community college and held a variety of part-time jobs from cleaning to delivery work. Every day tested his courage, but the vision of a prosperous future for his family motivated him to persevere. Gradually, Danushka's efforts bore fruit. With business acumen and a smart work ethic, he established a modest cleaning business. What started as a solo business quickly expanded, allowing him to recruit a team and secure consistent contracts with local businesses. This newfound stability inspired Danushka to fulfill a long-held dream, bringing his family to Canada. In early 2023, Danushka's perseverance culminated in a joyful reunion with his wife, Darshani, and their children, Inuka, Ashwini, and Raya. They settled in the suburb of Barhaven, a peaceful community with top schools and a safe environment for teenagers. The new home symbolizes their shared hopes and aspirations, a sanctuary where they can build a prosperous future together. The Wickramasinghe family embraces this chapter of their lives with hope, convinced that they have finally achieved the stability and prosperity they have long desired. Their reunion was a poignant celebration of love and resilience, marked by tears of joy and heartfelt hugs that affirmed their unbreakable bond. Darshani, a dedicated teacher, quickly becomes a stable pillar for the family. She took a teaching position at a local school where her dedication and passion for education shone brightly. The children, initially hesitant about their new life, quickly find their stride. They attended Manor Paul Baxter School, quickly made friends, and excelled academically. Baravan's friendly community provided a supportive network drive, smoothing their transition and fostering a sense of belonging. The arrival of their youngest daughter, Kelly, to Ottawa made their family circle complete. Kelly radiates hope and happiness, bringing laughter and love to the house. Danushka dives into her new life with gusto, nurturing a tight-knit, dynamic family built on support and affection. Their weekends were filled with explorations of local parks, community gatherings, and family outings, the epitome of the Canadian dream they worked tirelessly to achieve. However, underneath this happy exterior, dark clouds are gathering. Unbeknownst to them, the seeds of tragedy have been sown, threatening to unravel their dreams. This family story, woven of joy and lurking despair, could be the poignant heart of a gripping true crime documentary, revealing the fragile nature of happiness. Luck and unforeseen forces can disrupt it. March 6, 2024 was a normal day for the Danushka family in their new Canadian home. The morning is bustling with activity. Danushka went to work early, while his wife prepared the children for school. The day passed with routine activities, marking another normal day in their lives. Unbeknownst to them, by evening their lives would change forever. As dusk fell, Danushka returned home around 10:30 p.m., tired after a long day of work. Relief flooded through him as he thought about reuniting with his family. However, entering their Barhaven townhouse, he encountered a chilling scene. The dim living room was the stage for a horrifying scene. Fabio de Zoysa, a 19-year-old man well known to his family, was also there and brandished a knife. Panic rose within Danushka as he realized the immediate threat to his loved ones. A fierce confrontation broke out between Danushka and Fabio de Zoysa. Despite Danushka's brave efforts to protect his family, he was seriously injured. His calls for Fabio de Zoysa to spare them were ignored. Amid the growing chaos and violence, Danushka, bleeding and desperate, fled home. His cry for help pierced the quiet night as he staggered out onto the street. Neighbors, awakened by the disturbance, rushed to the aid of the collapsed man, who was now pleading for the safety of his family. The quiet neighborhood was shaken by the sight of a bloodied man in distress, leading to a series of emergency calls. Soon the area was filled with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, signaling the beginning of a horrifying discovery. Now let's consider this. How could an acquaintance become the culprit in such a brutal incident? Do you think it was a spontaneous act of violence, or maybe there were some signs that were missed? Could this tragedy have been prevented if previous signs of discord had been recognized and resolved? Join the conversation and share your thoughts. The police investigation was quickly conducted. Detectives investigate Fabio de Zoysa's past relationships with the Danushka family, looking for clues and motive behind his drastic actions. They discovered that previous tensions had been simmering beneath the surface, unnoticed by many but serious enough to lead to that night's tragedy. Follow along as we dive into a conversation that not only seeks to understand the origins of violence, but also aims to create a path toward healing and prevention. The officers entering the house were about to discover a scene of unprecedented horror that would haunt them for years to come. When the police arrived at Wickramasinghe's house, they were faced with a scene of unimaginable horror. The half-open front door is a dangerous entrance to the nightmare inside. As officers cautiously stepped inside, their flashlights illuminated the stark reality of the brutal attack. In the living room, they found the lifeless body of Darshani, 35, lying in a pool of blood. Her eyes were closed and her face bore signs of a fierce struggle. The walls were stained with traces of violence, a grim testament to the horror that had taken place. As the officers moved through the house, their hearts sank further with each discovery. In the children's bedroom, they found the young victims: 7-year-old Inuka, Ashwini, 4 years old, and Rana is 3 months old. Each child lay motionless, their small bodies bearing the marks of a violent attack. Newborn baby Kelly, less than 2.5 months old, was found in a crib, her life brutally taken before it began. Among the dead was also a family friend, Gamini Amaran, who had recently arrived in Canada and was staying with Wickramasinghe's family. Danushka, who was excited about new beginnings in Canada, met a tragic end alongside the family he loved. The once vibrant house was now terrifyingly silent, the air heavy with the smell of blood and death. Investigators quickly sealed off the area, marking it as a crime scene. Forensic teams began a meticulous search for clues, documenting the carnage left in the wake of Fabio de Zoysa Dua's rampage. This shocking discovery caused a wave of sadness and disbelief in the community. Neighbors who once saw Wickramasinghe as a beacon of hope and resilience now gathered in somber silence, trying to understand the scale of the tragedy. A peaceful suburban street became the site of one of Ottawa's worst mass murders, leaving an indelible mark on those involved. How do you think the community should react to such an indescribable tragedy? Should they come together to support each other, or is it more important to seek justice and ensure perpetrators are held accountable? Your thoughts on this issue could shape how we move forward as a society. Let's dig deeper into the unfolding story and understand the complexities of this tragic event. As the investigation unfolded, the community's grief turned into a search for answers and hopeless. The Wickramasinghe family was much loved and respected. Their brutal deaths seemed to have great significance. As the grim news of the massacre echoed across the country, hearts everywhere were plunged into a state of deep mourning. What could have pushed Fabio de Zoisadua to such darkness? This question has haunted the shocked community as they anxiously await the results of an ongoing investigation. Barrhaven, once a quiet neighborhood, has now become indelibly scarred. Its peace shattered on a fateful night that witnessed the breakup of an innocent family full of love. The Wickramasinghe family, beloved pillars of their community, have touched countless lives. Dharani Wickramasinghe, 35, a former teacher and devoted mother, was famous for her deep kindness and steadfast dedication to her family. To balance life in Canada, she continuously supports her children and husband and extends her nurturing activities beyond the home by actively participating in local and school events. Their son Inuka, just 7 years old, radiates boundless energy and joy. His passion for football and bright spirit made him a favorite among his peers at Paul Baxter Manor School, where his academic and social prowess made him appreciated. Hi. Inuka's charm and bubbly humor brought laughter and light to everyone around her. At the age of 4, Ashwini's cheerful and creative spirit is hard to resist. Her love of painting transformed their home into a living gallery of her artwork. Her laughter was a melody that filled their lives with joy, making each moment a precious memory. Ranaya, just 2 years old, is the family's little explorer, always curious and full of joy. Innocent giggles and excitement to discover and share things, her discovery infused their home with love and laughter. Baby Kelly, just 2.5 months old, symbolizes the family's hopes and dreams for a future that are now shattered. Her gentle whispers and smile grew brighter each day, bringing a ray of hope to their entire family. Gamini Maron, 40, a close family friend and recent immigrant, sought a new chapter in Canada with Wickramasinghe. His kindness and dream of a new beginning were brutally severed, leaving a deep emptiness in the hearts of those who knew him. Tragically, each family member's bright future was abruptly ended by a senseless act of violence, leaving behind a community mired in grief and a nation struggling to understand each other. What do you think could motivate someone to commit such an unimaginable crime? First, mental health issues. Could untreated or unrecognized mental health issues have driven Fabio de Zoisa to commit this brutal act? Often, underlying psychological problems can manifest in unpredictable and tragic ways. Second, social and environmental factors. Was it a combination of social pressure, environmental stressors, or perhaps a history of personal trauma that pushed Fabio de Zoisa to the edge of the abyss? In the context of this heartbreaking crime, the relationship between the perpetrator, Fabio de Zoisa, and the Wickramasinghe family played a central role in the event. Fabio de Zoisa was not only a friend of the family, but was also considered a close member. Before the incident, Fabio de Zoisa had been present at many family activities and important events, frequently visiting the Wickramasinghe home and participating in their daily life. Danushka and her family got to know Fabio de Zoisa through the local community and quickly came to appreciate his hospitality and kindness. They trusted Fabio de Zoisa, regularly inviting him to family meals and festivals. Their children also view Fabio de Zoisa as a big brother, often playing and spending time together. However, this relationship gradually had cracks for unknown reasons. Although Fabio de Zoisa regularly communicates and seems to fit in with his family, it appears that he carries internal conflicts and stress that are not clearly expressed. This may have contributed to his sudden and incomprehensible actions, which led to that terrible tragedy. This story raises profound questions about the true nature of human relationships and what may lie behind the masks of friendliness and closeness. The investigation continues to uncover interactions and conflicts that may have been overlooked before the tragedy, while the community and family try to understand and accept the harsh truth behind the unforgivable act. This Thursday, Fabio de Zoisa's first appearance in court carried a solemn shadow. He is facing 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, charges that carry the most serious legal consequences. When he stood before the judge, the search for clarity began in earnest. The motive for the murder remained secret, adding a puzzling aspect to this harrowing incident. Theories and conjectures spread as the community tried to understand what could have driven Fabio de Zoysa to such heinous acts. The inquiry is set to delve into his background, looking at his personal relationships and any previous behavior that could shed light on his sudden violent behavior. The effort to uncover the truth is just beginning as a family, a community, and a nation grieve the untimely loss of innocent lives. The investigation into the murder of the Wickramasinghe family was precise and meticulous. The forensic team diligently collects evidence at the crime scene, paying attention to every small detail. Blood samples, fingerprints, and DNA were all collected, providing important insights into the tragic events that night. The house, once a bastion of joy and warmth, has transformed into an important location for discovering the truth. Detectives conducted interviews with friends, family members, and neighbors to develop a detailed sequence of events. They aimed to piece together Fabio de Zoysa's interactions with his family and any missed warning signs. Local communities play a vital role as individuals provide information, wish to assist with investigations, and ensure justice for the fallen. The arrest of Fabio de Zoysa signals the beginning of a complex trial process. Facing serious charges, he prepares for a long and arduous battle in court. His first court appearance was brief, with Fabio de Zoysa showing little emotion. The courtroom was filled with grief and anger, becoming the focus of his search for justice community. With each new trial, evidence, and testimony, the community will better understand the tragic events that shattered their peace and safety. The outcome of the trial not only decided the fate of Fabio de Zoysa, but also marked an important step in the process of healing the community's wounds. As the legal confrontations continue, the shared desire for justice remains steadfast, a symbol of determination amid profound grief. As one follows this case, one must wonder, how will justice be served in the face of such complex legal and emotional challenges? Does Fabio de Zoysa's mental state actually mitigate his crimes, or was this an attempt to avoid a calculated crime? I invite you to ponder these questions and share your thoughts. What do you believe will be the key factor that determines Fabio de Zoysa's fate? Are they psychological assessments or evidence of premeditation? Let's continue this conversation as we learn the layers of this tragic story. After the disaster, the community rallied to support Danushka, working in many impactful ways. A GoFundMe has been set up to cover funeral expenses and support Danushka, who suddenly lost everything. The campaign quickly exceeded its initial goal, raising more than $162,000 from more than 1,000 contributors. This outpouring of support has highlighted the profound compassion and generosity of individuals from diverse backgrounds, moved by this family's devastating ordeal. The Canadian Buddhist Congress has been responsible for organizing aid to Danushka, coordinating prayer sessions, providing consultation, and managing funds to provide financial relief. To Danushka, demonstrating the community's ongoing compassion and resilience in the face of such tragedy. As we delve into the painful tragedy of the Wickramasinghe family, we find ourselves grappling with unresolved questions. What drove Fabio de Zoysa to commit such a terrible act? How can a community begin to recover from such a profound loss? We hope this series has shed light on the complex undercurrents of social issues. If you found this story intriguing, consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth investigations into the murky depths of criminal behavior. As we conclude today's exploration of a heartbreaking true crime story, we must pause to reflect on the profound impact such events have on families, communities, and societies. Association in general. The stark contrast between a family's dreams and the grim reality they encounter invites us to consider not only the psychological aspects of crime, but also the preventative measures capable of preventing such crimes. Such tragedy. It is important for each of us to remain vigilant, recognize the early signs of discord, and take action when we feel something is not right. Early one fall morning, Melissa Porter's lifeless body was found in her car on a remote road just outside of town. Melissa, a beloved local kindergarten teacher, had been reported missing 2 days earlier, leaving her husband James and their community in a state of shock. James Porter, a gentle accountant, appeared very distressed, his voice shaking with worry when reporting her disappearance to the authorities. The discovery of her body confirmed his darkest fears, plunging him into a nightmarish reality. Besides James, scrutiny fell on two other individuals, Michael Reynolds and Joe Clark, both of whom had close relationships with Melissa, each with intense, complicated feelings toward her. Detective Sarah Davis, a veteran with a sharp intellect and relentless pursuit of justice, takes over the investigation. As she delves into Melissa's life and the relationships that bind her to James, Michael, and Joe, it becomes clear that beneath the surface of this seemingly simple case lies a maze of secrets and treachery. The story of Melissa Porter's death is not just the story of a tragic death, but also a tangled web of love, deception, and revenge. The incident came to light one clear morning when Officer Tom Harris was alerted to an abandoned vehicle on the edge of Oakwood. Approaching the scene, the image of Melissa Porter's haphazardly parked car sent shivers down his spine. The car was placed in an uneven position, half on gravel, half on grass. As he approached, a faint stench emanated from inside. Looking through the foggy window, Harris was startled to see Melissa slumped over the steering wheel, her skin pale and a streak of dried blood on her temple. Although the exact cause of her death remains unclear, the circumstances suggest foul play. What do you think led to Melissa Porter's tragic end? Did the intertwined emotions of James, Michael, and Joe cause a fatal outcome? The small town of Oakwood is extremely shocked and saddened after a grisly discovery. For 48 hours, the community held out hope that Melissa was missing, with friends and family hoping for her safe return. However, their hopes were cruelly shattered. James Porter finds himself inconsolable, his grief increased by the public scrutiny now directed at him. Once the person who reported Melissa missing, James now finds himself at the center of a murder investigation. Detective Sarah Davis arrived at the crime scene, her face looking serious. She thoroughly inspected the vehicle and the area around it, noting that Melissa had no defensive wounds on her body and no signs of struggle. These observations suggest that Melissa may have been unconscious or unconscious loss of ability before death. Preliminary investigations showed traces of powder on the passenger seat, which is considered a strong sedative. Davis ordered the car to be towed to a forensic lab for further analysis and instructed her team to canvass the area for potential witnesses. The investigation is just getting underway and the pressure to find the truth is increasing. The community's demand for justice for Melissa was clear, and the police were determined to see it through. The Oakwood Police Department quickly stepped in to investigate the death of Melissa Porter. The team's first mission is to interrogate James Porter, due to his close relationship with Melissa, making him an initial person of interest. James appeared tired and exhausted at the station, dark circles under his eyes indicating many sleepless nights. Detective Davis began with the usual questions about his relationship with Melissa, their recent activities, and his whereabouts at the time of her disappearance. Melissa Porter was born and raised in Oakwood, a town she loved and never wanted to leave. Melissa Porter is celebrated for her radiant smile and innate ability to create connections, qualities that make her. She became an excellent kindergarten teacher. Her union with James, formed at a charity event 5 years ago, is considered a great match. They married quickly, and for a time, their life together was the epitome of happiness. However, as the novelty gradually wore off, Melissa felt increasingly uneasy. The monotonous wave of married life has fueled the desire for more, hinting at unfulfilled desires beneath the idyllic exterior. James describes his 5-year marriage to Melissa as outwardly happy and highly regarded by those around him. He detailed the evening Melissa disappeared. She left home around 7 p.m. to run errands and never returned. Worried, he contacted the police the next morning. As Davis scrutinized his behavior for any signs of deception, James provided an alibi. He had been at home that night watching television and offered to verify this through the security system, their family security. Davis took this information to heart for further investigation. Now let's start with a thought-provoking question. Do you think James Porter's grief is real, or could it just be a cover-up for guilt? Here are two possibilities to consider. 1. James is the culprit. James may be pretending to be sad to deflect suspicion. He reported Melissa missing immediately, possibly to show concern, while he may have used his close proximity to her to inject a sedative, causing her loss feels like a kidnapping. 2. James is innocent. James may actually be a distraught husband, wrongly arrested during the investigation. His prompt reporting and cooperation with police, including providing home security footage, may have been the genuine actions of a man desperate to find his wife. suggesting someone may be responsible. As the interview progressed, another name emerged: Michael Reynolds. James revealed that Michael is a longtime friend of Melissa's, someone who has been deeply involved in her life. Despite feeling somewhat uneasy about their relationship, James cannot identify any solid reasons for suspicion. This prompted Detective Davis to begin a visit to Michael's residence. Michael Reynolds, a man in his mid-30s who stood tall with a relaxed confidence, greeted the detectives at his door. He appeared truly shocked by the news of Melissa's death, insisting that their relationship was purely platonic. However, his occasional restlessness hinted at deeper layers to their story. The scope of the investigation expanded to include Joe Clark, a local artist who frequently appeared in Melissa's company. Joe, who is characterized by a dark, pensive mood and a preference for solitude, is more evasive. His answer is elusive and mysterious, leading Detective Davis to suspect that both Michael and Joe are hiding the truth. As they dig deeper, the intricacies of Melissa's life begin to emerge, portraying a deeply complex and mysterious woman. Each interview adds to the story, increasing the urgency of uncovering the truth. Melissa's death is shrouded in a web of secrets, challenging Davis to uncover buried truths. This escalating investigation, part of a true crime documentary series, invites audiences to look beyond the facade of normalcy, engaging in the complexity of human relationships and the shadow they cast in the light of tragedy. Michael and Melissa have been friends since high school. Their bond is exceptionally strong, often seeming romantic. Michael, a successful and charismatic businessman, brought excitement and stimulation and passion that Melissa felt was missing in her marriage. What started as a platonic relationship eventually developed into a secret affair. Then came Joe Clark. Joe, a local artist known for his moody, evocative paintings and reclusive demeanor, happened to meet Melissa at an art exhibition the year before her death. Unlike James or Michael, Joe was mysterious and introverted, traits that captivated Melissa. Their relationship was instant, and before long, Melissa was also involved with Joe. Only a select group of friends know about Melissa's relationships with both Michael and Joe, which she carefully keeps hidden from James. However, managing these secret relationships proves increasingly difficult, making Melissa's life more complicated. She feels affection for each man, each of whom fulfills her in different ways, but she recognizes the unstable nature of her tangled web of romance. With the discovery of Melissa's body and the subsequent unraveling of her hidden life, suspicion naturally turned to her husband, James Porter. Detective Davis meticulously reviewed his alibi, looking for any discrepancies that might indicate his involvement in Melissa's disappearance. James claimed he had been home all evening, his account corroborated by home security footage showing no signs of him leaving. However, Davis remained skeptical, knowing that an alibi could be created or manipulated as the Porters' marriage came under close scrutiny. While friends and neighbors described the couple as outwardly content, underlying problems were apparent. Financial troubles, evidenced by significant debts, emerged as a potential motive for James to get rid of his wife. Although Melissa's life insurance was unremarkable, it added to the suspicion. James's behavior during the interrogations was especially notable. While he expressed genuine grief, certain responses seemed overly rehearsed and controlled, leading Davis to question whether he was hiding the truth or merely covering up. Shield yourself from false accusations. But the most incriminating evidence turned out to be a series of text messages exchanged between James and Melissa shortly before she disappeared. These messages revealed growing tension. Melissa expressed her unhappiness and James countered with obvious discomfort. Their exchanges, while not directly threatening, paint a picture of a marriage teetering on the brink. Additionally, James's dealings with Michael and Joe signal trouble. Both men confessed to having conflicts with James, who was increasingly paranoid about their relationship with Melissa. Although James denied any knowledge of Melissa's extramarital activities, his hostility toward these men was clear. As the investigation progressed, James Porter remained the prime suspect. His underlying motives, financial gain, marital strife, and jealousy, gave Detective Davis plenty of reason to keep a close eye on him. However, due to the lack of direct evidence, the case against him is still based on circumstantial details. Michael Reynolds and Joe Clark, two men with close ties to Melissa, are the next on Detective Davis's radar. Each man has his own reasons for keeping Melissa around, and possibly his own motives for wanting her absent. Michael Reynolds, with his engaging presence and flourishing career, initially did not seem like a suspect. Over the years, he became Melissa's trusted ally, their relationship developing into a romance that brought them both happiness and complications. Michael truly cares for Melissa, but his frustration with her indecisiveness and the secretive nature of their affair give rise to underlying tensions. During his interview, Michael admitted feeling hurt and betrayed when he learned about Melissa's relationship with Joe, but he firmly denied any involvement in her disappearance. Joe Clark presents a stark contrast. Known for his introspective nature and artistic abilities, Joe has always been a bit of a mystery. His relationship with Melissa is deep and fiery, but tainted by jealousy and possessiveness. His artwork often reflects his intense emotions, and his dynamic with Melissa is no different. During his interview, Joe sounded cautious. He mourns Melissa's passing, but still harbors resentment for her inability to fully commit to their relationship. What do you think? Who seems more likely to commit a crime of passion? Vote for 1. Michael Reynolds, businessman with a broken heart. 2. Joe Clark, person. The artist is engulfed by chaotic emotions. Follow along as we dig deeper into this complex web of relationships and discover more about each suspect's true motives. As Detective Davis digs deeper into the lives and secrets of Melissa, James, Michael, and Joe, startling revelations come to light, painting a more vivid picture of Melissa's entangled life. The first important information was provided by Melissa's close friend, Laura Mitchell. Laura revealed that Melissa had been sharing her marital troubles and marital turmoil with Michael and Joe for months. Melissa feels increasingly cornered, struggling to keep her marriage intact while also managing her extramarital relationships. Furthermore, Melissa expressed concerns about being stalked, even though she never identified the stalker. This revelation causes Davis to re-examine the evidence, considering the involvement of third parties who may have known about Melissa's affairs and wished for her downfall. She ordered a thorough review of Melissa's communications and social media for any traces of threats or unusual activity. The forensic examination of Melissa's car revealed another important detail. Tranquilizer residue on the passenger seat is related to a prescription bearing Joe Clark's name. When confronted, Joe's calm demeanor begins to falter. He admitted possessing the sedative but denied any intention of harming Melissa, claiming she had requested it to help her sleep, a claim difficult to prove. The case becomes more complicated with the discovery about Michael's finances. Significant transfers to an unknown party suggest suspicious transactions. Michael claimed these were business-related, but the vague details raised suspicions, making Davis wonder if Michael was involved in blackmail or had paid someone to scare Melissa. Or not. What do you think? Can someone outside their immediate circle join? What could their motives be? The investigation then took a dramatic turn with the discovery of a hidden diary in Melissa's possessions. This diary reveals detailed stories about her relationships with James, Michael, and Joe, recording her feelings of suffocation under James's control, the thrill of having an affair with Michael, and her deep conflict about her intense relationship with Joe. It also detailed anonymous threats she received, which she believed were from someone who knew about her problems. This diary provides a glimpse into Melissa's psychology, illustrating her desperation to escape her entangled life. These intimate entries provided Detective Davis with vital insights into Melissa's hidden motives and thoughts, pushing her closer to discovering the truth. Just when Detective Davis thinks she's getting closer to solving the case, a surprising twist appears that changes the focus of the investigation. Security cameras from a local convenience store recorded Melissa with a man identified as Daniel Harper, a former co-worker from a neighboring town, the night she disappeared. Harper, who is known for his violent past and his ex-girlfriend's restraining order, has added new complications to the case. During questioning, Harper, a somewhat thin man with a nervous demeanor, initially denied his recent contact with Melissa. However, confronted with the surveillance video, he revised his account, admitting their meeting but claiming it was just a conversation. He claimed Melissa had contacted him, sensing danger and looking for someone she could trust, choosing to meet in Oakwood to avoid familiar eyes. Harper's story, while possible, makes Davis skeptical, given Harper's unrequited feelings for Melissa as well as his history of jealousy and violence. His capacity for aggression, reinforced by feelings of rejection or betrayal, remains a concern. Serious concern. What are your thoughts on this turn of events in our true crime documentary story? Can Harper tell the truth, or does his past suggest a darker connection? Please share your thoughts and theories as we continue to unravel this complicated case. Detective Davis digs deeper into Harper's past and his interactions with Melissa. At the same time, forensic analysis of Harper's car discovered traces of the same sedative found in Melissa's car, directly linking Harper to the crime scene and identifying him as a suspect. Main offense. Under the burden of gathering evidence, Harper's account began to crumble. He admitted to injecting Melissa with a sedative, but claimed it was because she requested it to calm down, do not worry. Detective Davis understands that Harper's involvement has added complexity to the case, but she feels there is more underneath the surface. Harper's explanations did not completely match the actual evidence, leading Davis to theorize that perhaps Harper had been influenced by someone else, possibly Michael or Joe, to commit the crime. Suspicions of a wider conspiracy began to emerge. As Davis continued, Harper revealed a shocking detail. He had been receiving anonymous payments for months, similar to Michael, for the purpose of keeping his interactions with Melissa a secret. This shows a concerted effort to bury the truth about Melissa. The investigation takes a grim turn when Detective Davis unravels the tangled web of deception surrounding Melissa's death. The anonymous payments and Harper's involvement suggest a deeper, more sinister plot. Now, Davis must accept the possibility that Melissa's death was not simply a crime of passion, but a premeditated murder orchestrated by an unknown mastermind. Davis shifted his focus to the financial footprint of the payments. They traced a series of transactions through a shell company to an offshore account, showing meticulous planning and resourcefulness, traits not typical of homegrown criminals. This clue made them suspect Michael Reynolds, considering his business expertise. Meeting Michael again with new evidence, his calm begins to waver under harsh interrogation. He confessed to sending money to Harper, claiming it was to protect Melissa at her behest, not knowing that Harper would misuse the money. However, Davis doubts Michael's justification. She speculates that Michael, trapped by Melissa's hesitation and the risk of their affair being revealed, plotted to take her out of the picture. However, carrying out such a complex plan would likely require complicity. Joe Clark, known for his volatile temper and relationship with Melissa, appears to be a possible accomplice. Confronted by Joe with evidence of financial transactions and sedatives, he finally succumbs to the pressure. He admitted that Michael convinced him that Melissa intended to leave them both and reveal their secret. Desperate to prevent this, Joe agrees to Michael's plan to sedate Melissa and make her disappear. Now, reflecting on this complex web of deception and manipulation, what do you think was the most important turning point in unraveling the case? Do you believe that other individuals may still be involved, lurking in the shadows of this dark story? The harsh reality has become clear. Michael Reynolds masterminded the entire plan, manipulating Joe and Harper to carry out his sinister plan. Motivated by more than mere jealousy, Michael also wanted to remove Melissa from the picture to protect his personal reputation and business efforts. Joe, influenced by his emotional conflicts, unwittingly aided in the plot, while Harper, lured by financial gain, participated without fully understanding the consequences. Detective Davis's diligent investigation exposes a terrifying conspiracy that shows the extreme measures individuals can take to hide their secrets and ambitions. The complexity and cruelty of the case surpassed all initial assumptions, revealing the depth of human deception and betrayal. With the pieces of the mystery in place, Detective Davis wasted no time in obtaining arrest warrants for Michael Reynolds and Joe Clark. The case against them is formidable, bolstered by financial records, confessions, and forensic links to the barbiturates found with Joe. Davis and her team coordinated meticulously to ensure the arrests were made seamlessly. Joe was captured first, discovered in his studio amid his dark, expressive artwork, a stark picture of chaos and regret. Overcome with remorse, he did not resist, expressing his apologies and asking about Melissa's last moments. His regret was palpable, but not enough to atone. Arresting Michael was not simple at all. Knowing he was about to be captured, he tried to escape. However, thanks to the coordinated efforts of Oakwood police, he was detained at a private airstrip while attempting to board a charter flight. His arrest was marked by defiance and claims of innocence, accusing police of fabricating evidence. With both suspects in custody, preparations have begun for a high-profile trial in what promises to be one of the most intriguing cases in Oakwood's history. The trial attracted widespread media coverage, and the courtroom was filled with locals, reporters, and acquaintances of Melissa. The prosecution presented a compelling story of deception, manipulation, and murder, while the defense portrayed Michael as a victim of circumstances, and Joe as a man pushed to the brink of despair. Now here's something to ponder. Who do you believe is more culpable in this tragedy? Is it Michael, the mastermind, or Joe, the emotionally manipulated participant? Or do you think they both play equally important roles in this dark story? Let us know what you think and stay tuned as the story continues to unfold. The jury's deliberations lasted for days, meticulously examining the wealth of evidence and insightful testimony presented. Ultimately, both Michael Reynolds and Joe Clark were convicted of attempted murder and second-degree murder. Michael was sentenced to life in prison without the option of parole due to his important role in orchestrating the conspiracy. On the other hand, Joe received a somewhat lenient sentence of 25 years, reflecting the jury's recognition of his genuine remorse and cooperation during the trial. Daniel Harper, who was believed to be more involved, was sentenced to 10 years for his role as an accomplice to the murder, his actions seen as manipulated by the main conspirators. When the dust settled, Oakwood gradually regained its usual peaceful rhythm of life, but the echoes of Melissa Porter's tragedy still lingered, leaving an indelible mark on the community. Her story has become a somber reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Now let us reflect on the outcome. Do you think justice was truly served in this case? First, yes, the above sentences correctly reflect the roles and cooperation of relevant parties. 2. No, sentencing disparities fail to fairly address the severity of each individual's actions. What do you think? Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey through the darkness of Oakwood, where love, betrayal, and mystery intertwine in the life and tragic death of Melissa Porter. Harry Major, an 82-year-old former English teacher, had special friends with whom he frequently exchanged letters. However, one of these friends caused his horrific death. Harry's body was found in the bathtub of his apartment at 1400 North Vista Street, Hollywood, California. While cleaning the apartment, someone accidentally discovered a 4-inch high stack of letters, hundreds of letters from state and federal prisoners across the United States. Some letters were very ordinary. Others suggested offers of money or bus tickets to Los Angeles, and there were even letters containing sensitive images. For many years, Harry Major had invited former prisoners to stay with him after their release, turning his one-bedroom apartment into a real temporary home. One of these friends is believed to have caused his death. What was the true relationship between Harry Major and the prisoners? Who was responsible for the death of the former teacher? Today's case takes place in Hollywood, located in northwest Los Angeles, California, on the west coast of the United States. Hollywood is the global center of the music and film industries. Not only does it hold a leading position in entertainment, but it also represents the pinnacle of international fashion with top luxury brands. Hollywood is a hub for many titans of the film industry, and the prestigious Oscars ceremony is held here annually. Today, Hollywood has become a symbol of the American film industry, embodying the creativity and power of the seventh art. In this place, Harry Major was once a respected teacher, serving for 28 years at Hollywood High School. Harry Major grew up in Chatsworth in Arcadia, where he lived and worked on his family's farm during the 1940s, when orange groves still grew in LA. He graduated from Pomona College and began teaching English at Hollywood High School at the age of 25. His class was known as one of the most diligent in the school, and for some students who read books like Evelyn Waugh's The Loved One and Albert Camus' The Stranger, it was one of the most rewarding classes. He was a highly regarded English teacher who taught classic works with dedication, impacting thousands of students, many of whom became famous in the future. One of them was the late actor John Ritter, who called Harry his favorite teacher. Harry had a congenital disability in his left arm and hand, possibly due to his mother taking thalidomide for nausea during pregnancy. He often wore suits with a cream-colored bow tie and kept his deformed left hand in his pocket. The kids would sometimes joke about throwing something at him to see if he could catch it with both hands. Despite this, Harry was respected and admired by many students for his dedication as a teacher. After 28 years of teaching, Harry felt that education was declining, becoming a tragedy akin to Shakespearean plays. He noticed that students no longer maintained discipline and many young people were not interested in learning. Feeling disillusioned, Harry decided to leave teaching and turn to real estate. With the help of his friend and real estate broker Dale Rose, Harry invested in this field. With Dale's support, Harry, despite his teacher's salary, was able to accumulate considerable assets. Over time, Harry not only accumulated wealth but also developed a good business acumen and made many friends. He was an extremely generous and humorous person. However, all his friends knew that there was one thing missing in Harry's life. He had never had a romantic relationship with anyone. Previously, Harry had worked diligently and devoted himself to education, never having a real relationship. In his later years, Harry didn't have a life partner and felt very lonely, longing for love. Despite the absence of love in his life, Harry made the most of each day. Even at the age of 82, he remained active in politics and social activities. When he spoke, one could see the teacher in him come alive. Harry was witty, articulate, and charming. Through real estate transactions, Harry had the opportunity to travel extensively over the next 30 years. By 2014, he had visited more than 90 countries. On February 5, 2014, Harry, aged 82, lived alone in a small apartment near Sunset Boulevard. In his free time, he often went to the Senior Activities Center to pass the time, drink tea, and chat with his old friends. A few days before Harry's death, two strange men who were believed to live in his apartment frequently argued, causing a disturbance. Fortunately, they left, and the house finally became quiet again. According to Harry's neighbors, strange men often appeared at his home, but no one knew who they were. However, the neighbors gradually became accustomed to this. On the evening of February 12, 2014, around 7 p.m., Harry's landlord received a worried phone call. The caller said they had planned to have lunch with Harry that day, but Harry did not show up and could not be reached. Concerned that something bad had happened, the landlord decided to check on Harry's apartment. They knocked on the door for a while but received no response, so they used a spare key to enter the house, feeling uneasy as they stepped inside. Harry's apartment was a mess, which was unusual since he was known to be very clean and organized, even arranging cans and bottles in the kitchen alphabetically. Seeing no one in the living room and kitchen, the landlord went straight to the master bedroom, and as soon as they opened the door, they were hit by a foul odor. The landlord discovered Harry lying almost naked in the bathroom, no longer breathing. The police were called immediately and the scene was secured. Upon examination, they determined that Harry had been dead for several days. From the entrance of the apartment, the police found numerous bloodstains resembling footprints scattered across the stairs, living room, kitchen, and other areas. They also found a rope in the bathroom. Preliminary autopsy results indicated that Harry died on February 10th, with the likely cause of death being suffocation, and the murder weapon possibly a belt. Those who knew Harry said he had never married and always lived alone. Shortly before his murder, Harry had asked his friends not to hold a funeral and to simply scatter his ashes at sea after his death. Harry was known for being kind and generous, never making enemies with anyone. Although he supported atheism and gay rights, these views could not have led to his murder. So who could do this to an 82-year-old man? A neighbor living next to Harry told the police that she saw him almost every day, and the last time she saw him was on February 8th. However, on February 10th, she clearly remembered something strange happening. At 10 a.m. that day, while she was rushing to work and doing laundry in the bathroom, she heard a loud bang coming from Harry's adjacent apartment. Her bathroom shared a wall with Harry's apartment, and she thought Harry had slipped in his bathroom, so she shouted through the wall, asking if he was okay and what had happened. But no one responded for a long time. Worried, she intended to check on Harry, but no one answered the door. As she was about to call the police, she heard a voice that sounded like a woman saying that Harry was not home and had gone to the store to buy something. Still concerned, she asked again what had happened, and the voice replied that everything was fine. At that moment, because she was in a hurry to go to work, she left without asking further questions, just feeling that it was very strange. The police gathered more information from other neighbors, who mentioned meeting a man named Scott or Scotty, who had stayed with Harry the previous week. Detectives found a phone book in Harry's apartment that caught their attention. The name Scott Porter appeared in this directory, but it meant nothing to Harry's friends. Scott Porter became a mystery, much like Harry's murder case. The detectives returned to Harry's apartment complex to re-interview the neighbors. According to Fleeman, a witness recalled seeing two strange men arguing outside Harry's door on February 5th. Now the police had a puzzle with 3 pieces. Who was the woman whose voice was heard from Major's apartment on February 10th, and who were the 2 men seen arguing? After Harry's death, his friend Dale Rose had the difficult task of sorting through Harry's personal belongings. Harry's closest friend Dale Rouse discovered a shocking secret about Harry, revealing a truth he had never known. Harry had no surviving family and had entrusted everything he had to Dale. Dale was stunned to uncover secrets about Harry's life. He discovered that Harry Major had a fascination with interacting with prisoners, which was shocking to Dale. Dale found stacks of letters sent to and from Harry, all with return addresses from prisons across the country. Harry had corresponded with numerous violent criminals, with many of the letters and photos being of a sexual nature. There were many sensitive nude images of male prisoners accompanying those letters. Harry had been estranged from his family after coming out as gay, so he built his own chosen family. He befriended several pardoned prisoners who provided intimacy in Harry's life without strings attached, as long as Harry paid them. He was wealthy and offered the prisoners a place to stay and money, but only if they engaged in sexual relations with him. After that, he would take them out to dinner and give them other valuable material gifts. Dale was shocked to discover this, unable to believe the side of Harry that he hadn't seen in many years. There had been no signs of this, and Harry was always known as a model teacher, so no one suspected these activities. Harry had skillfully separated the two worlds of his life. The police discovered a letter signed by Scott Porter from Mary Prison in New York among a pile of letters. Investigators quickly contacted the prison and learned that the man named Scott was actually named Scott Kratlian. He had dropped out of high school and had been living on the streets since 1992. Kratlian was arrested at the age of 19 for theft in Orange County, New York, and in the same year he was sentenced to 25 years in prison for murder. He had used a belt to strangle 66-year-old Salvatore Caggiano, then left his body in the bathtub. Kratlian claimed that Caggiano had sexually abused him since he was a child, although he had very little evidence to support this story. Kratlian had no family or friends, only a passion for television dramas. He was part of a pen pal fan club at General Hospital, which eventually led to him exchanging letters with Harry. Their correspondence lasted about 10 years. Harry had always flirted with Kratlian through their letters. On November 26, 2013, 46-year-old Kratlian was paroled and released. Harry had repeatedly said in his letters that he wanted Kratlian to come to Los Angeles and live with him, and he was willing to provide money for Kratlian to travel. In fact, whenever Harry knew that a pen pal was about to be released from prison, he would contact them beforehand and offer money or a place to stay at his home on the condition that they have sex with him. Many prisoners would choose to stay at his house for a while after being released because many of them had been in prison for decades and, upon release, were old and might not adapt well to society, or they had nowhere to go. Faced with these challenges, many of them were willing to exchange sex for some money, although not all of them were homosexual. Initially, the police suspected that Harry had been murdered because he had brought recently released criminals into his home, not only providing them with food and shelter, but also giving them generous pocket money, which might have sparked greed in these individuals. Some of Harry's neighbors also said that Harry often had strange guests who looked like criminals, one of whom often came late at night and appeared drunk. Surveillance video showed two white men in the parking lot below the apartment just days before the incident. These were the two men Harry's neighbors had seen. One of them was Scott Kratlian and the other was Jimmy. Jimmy was easier for the police to find as he was arrested after violating his parole upon leaving Nevada. Jimmy, 54, had served 17 years in a Nevada prison for robbing a store. During his imprisonment, he saw an advertisement from Harry seeking a gay pen pal, and they corresponded for over 10 years. The first time Jimmy spoke to Harry after his release was in 2009. Jimmy said that Harry was very generous. Harry would tell every ex-prisoner who came to his house that if they wanted food and shelter, they had to have sex with him. Harry also did what he could to help ex-convicts like Jimmy. For example, he wanted Scott Kratlian to attend college and was even willing to pay for it. When the police officer asked Jimmy if he knew where Scott was, Jimmy responded angrily. According to Jimmy, Scott Kratlian resembled Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights. With pale skin and thin, greasy hair, he had a courteous manner and a sharp sense of humor. In January 2014, Jimmy went to Harry's apartment in Hollywood to stay for a while. By the end of the month, Kratlian, who had just been released from prison, also came to Harry's house. The three lived together, but Kratlian and Jimmy couldn't really get along. Kratlian stayed at Harry's house when Jimmy left, and Jimmy didn't know where he went after that. Jimmy continued to say that they often argued over really trivial things, and Kratlian always said that Jimmy's poker games with Harry disturbed his sleep. and that Jimmy liked rummaging through the fridge and leaving him hungry. But the truth was that Kratlian played poker with Harry more than Jimmy did. He not only borrowed money from Harry, but also stole money from him. They had a big fight about it, and Kratlian said Jimmy was spying on him. Jimmy got so angry that he called Kratlian a fat gay man. Kratlian grabbed Jimmy by the collar, pinned him to the wall, yelled, and threatened Jimmy, saying he was a murderer. Jimmy didn't know that Kratlian might have killed him after this incident. Every night, Jimmy would sleep on the couch near the door in case Kratlian came in the middle of the night to retaliate. On the morning of February 5th, Jimmy asked Harry to drive him to the station so he could go home. When Jimmy left, he kept telling Harry that Kratlian was very dangerous and to be careful with him. But Harry only responded calmly, saying Jimmy didn't need to worry about it. After 3 days, verification showed that Jimmy never returned to Hollywood after leaving Harry's house, and concerns about him were dismissed. Meanwhile, Kratlian had left New York, violating his parole. He remained missing, and the police listed him as a major suspect. The Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI formed a task force to track Kratlian's whereabouts. The police discovered that after Harry's murder, Harry's credit card had been used multiple times. They quickly identified the person using the stolen credit card as Kratlian. According to Harry's friends, Harry was very intelligent and, despite being wealthy, lived frugally and planned his finances well. Therefore, no one could understand why he would freely lend his credit card to Kratlian. On February 18, 2014, just 8 days after Harry's death, the task force arrested Kratlian at a psychiatric hospital in North Los Angeles. During the trial, Kratlian recounted that from late 2013 to early January, he had come to Los Angeles at Harry's invitation, a pen pal he had corresponded with for over a decade. However, the reality did not match his expectations. Kratlian was surprised to discover that Harry was 82 years old, 30 years older than him, and that another man was living in the same house. This age disparity caused dissatisfaction and disappointment for Kratlian. Additionally, Kratlian stated that doctors at the Marcy Correctional Facility had diagnosed him with borderline personality disorder. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, its core feature is a pervasive pattern of instability in interpersonal relationships, self-image, and marked impulsivity. Its symptoms may include frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Kratlian said, "We see things in black and white," when asked to describe how the disorder affected him. "Once you stab me in the back, that's it. I won't give you a chance to stab me in the back again." When Kratlian moved from New York to LA, he stopped taking his psychiatric medication. Kratlian recounted that around February 6th, he took a bus to the emergency room and told the doctors he wanted to commit suicide. He was eventually admitted to the mental health ward at Las Encinas Hospital in Pasadena. There, he was prescribed medication and discharged after a few days, returning to Harry's apartment. Kratlian admitted that he had threatened Jimmy and stolen money, but ultimately they had a big fight. Around 11 a.m. the next day, February 10th, Kratlian left Harry's house with his luggage, having been given some money by Harry. CCTV footage from downstairs showed Kratlian carrying a bag and leaving the apartment at that time. Each time he was asked what happened in the 8 days from Harry's murder to Kratlian's arrest, his story changed. He claimed he could barely remember the week of the murder. In his most recent account, he said that on Sunday, February 9th, Harry confronted him about threatening Jimmy, and the two men argued. The next morning, after living with Harry for about 10 days, Kratlian said he told Harry, "I'm going to give you some space." Harry gave him some money, and Kratlian said he left around 11 a.m. or noon. Harry had taken Kratlian and Jimmy to the Santa Monica Pier. Now Kratlian had returned. He had bought a bracelet that allowed him to go on the pier as many times as he liked. Kratlian's movements over the next few days remain unclear. He said he planned to save some money and return to New York. On the same day, Harry's body was discovered by Dale Rose, and a murder investigation was opened. On Tuesday, February 18th, 8 days after Harry's murder, the LAPD-FBI Joint Task Force arrested Kratlian while he was at Las Encinas, the mental health facility. He said he had returned to Las Encinas because he was depressed and anxious, and felt that they had prescribed the wrong medication for him. However, many believe that Kratlian staying in the psychiatric hospital was a way to evade the police after committing the crime. This perception may have been influenced by movies and TV shows of the time, which often portrayed psychiatric hospitals as places that did not disclose any information about patients' identities to the police, creating the impression that it was a good place for criminals to hide. After his arrest, discrepancies in Kratlian's story were uncovered. The police found that his right forearm was bruised by a cord, and blood found on the tennis shoes he was wearing matched Harry's DNA. The only DNA sample that matched the footprints at the crime scene was also found. Although the police showed him footage of him using Harry's credit card, he only admitted to using the credit card but did not confess to murdering Harry. Despite the inconsistent evidence, Kratlian was charged with the murder of 82-year-old Harry. Kratlian was held at the Men's Central Jail downtown, awaiting a preliminary hearing on the charge of murdering Harry Major. With a pale face, Kratlian said, "You might not believe me, but I didn't kill Harry. When my family turned their backs on me, Harry was the only person who truly cared about me. He was a good guy, and I would never take advantage of him or hurt him in any way." The trial faced many challenges due to the lack of direct evidence. The final verdict was reached after several rounds of court debates. Kratlian changed his testimony during the trial, claiming that Harry had interrogated him about the money after Jimmy left on February 5th and demanded that he leave immediately. On February 10th, Kratlian said he wanted to borrow money from Harry, but a scuffle ensued, causing injuries to Harry, but he was still alive. Kratlian's lawyer emphasized that no one saw Kratlian commit the crime on the day Harry was murdered, and the blood on his shoes did not prove he was the killer. The next-door neighbor, Luz Maria, heard a loud noise and went to Harry's house to check. She heard a woman standing behind the door saying that Harry had gone out to buy something. However, after reviewing the CCTV footage around the apartment, there was no evidence that Harry had gone out that day, and he was not recorded leaving the house at all. Therefore, it was clear that the loud noise was caused by the murderer. Kratlian had used a female voice at that time, possibly because Jimmy had mentioned that Kratlian had a rather feminine voice, which sometimes sounded like a woman's. However, if he changed his tone slightly, he would sound more like a man. After Harry was murdered, Kratlian took Harry's credit card and had an argument with a cashier at a 7-Eleven store. Video footage showed that his voice was very high-pitched during the argument, giving the impression of an angry woman speaking. The prosecutor compared Kratlian's 1992 murder case to Harry's case. The two cases had many similarities, including the method of killing. Both victims were about 40 years older than Kratlian and were murdered in the bathroom. Both were tied up before being killed and were nearly naked, and both were strangled with a belt. From this, it could be inferred that an argument between the two men had occurred on the day of the murder, and an enraged Kratlian decided to kill Harry in the same manner he had used 20 years earlier. This indicated that only Kratlian could have committed two very similar crimes. On November 18, 2015, 21 months after the incident, the jury delivered a final verdict that Kratlian was guilty of murdering 82-year-old Harry, and he was sentenced to 56 years in prison. Although he protested, claiming the sentence was unfair, he would have to serve his second prison term, and this time it could be for life, or Harry Major paid a steep price for his lack of caution and unforeseen trust. Remembering his story serves as a warning to everyone about the importance of risk assessment and careful actions when dealing with ex-convicts and strangers. The case of Harry Major is a powerful reminder to be cautious when making pen pals, especially with those who have a criminal past. Lack of caution can lead to unforeseen and heartbreaking consequences. First and foremost, it is necessary to thoroughly check the information and history of the person you are befriending. Second, maintaining vigilance and objectively evaluating the information and behavior of this person is crucial. Finally, a lack of awareness about the risks and protective measures can increase the dangers you face. We share in the deep sorrow over the loss of former teacher Harry Major. His passing is not only a loss for his family and friends, but also a significant loss for the community. Harry Major contributed greatly to education, not only as a teacher, but also as a mentor, inspiring and imparting knowledge to generations of students. With his commitment and dedication, he created hardworking and beneficial classrooms where students were motivated and developed their potential. We honor and remember the contributions of Harry Major, who made a difference in the lives of many. Though he has passed away, the memories of him and the impact he left on us will be remembered forever. What drives a woman to stand by her dying husband trapped in a web of love and betrayal? Is Beatrice a puppet in a deadly game or the mastermind of a macabre plot? Uncover the twists and turns in this gripping true crime documentary that leaves more questions than answers. Beatrice never imagined that her life would descend into a horrifying nightmare. It all started with a shattered window and disturbing bloodstains on her kitchen floor. In front of her, her husband Jean-Pierre lay dying, his lifeblood draining away. Caught in a terrifying chain of events, Beatrice sees her world turned upside down as love intertwines with betrayal to create a deadly nightmare. Since that fateful night, her once cozy home is turned into a virtual prison with Jean-Claude as her relentless manager. He watched her every move, preventing any attempt to escape or seek help. But what really happened that night? Is Beatrice merely a victim caught in dire circumstances, or is she a cunning orchestrator of chaos? Who really held the knife when Jean-Pierre met his tragic end? As the legal battle progresses, with in-depth investigation by both prosecutors and defense attorneys, the story becomes more and more complicated and macabre. Shocking accusations continued to emerge, secrets came to light, and the twists and turns of the trial captivated all who followed it. This story of love, deception, and murder becomes a crucible of truth, where every revelation can lead to even more startling discoveries. What is really hidden behind the faces of the people involved? Who is really to blame for this catastrophic event? So who exactly is Beatrice, and what dark story is tied to her fate? What about her lover, Jean-Claude? What role does he play in this grim story? To untangle the threads of a normal life that is turned into a nightmarish reality, we learn their histories, relationships, and underlying motivations. Join us as we explore the figures behind this horrific crime and follow the series of events that led to their tragic end in this gripping true crime documentary. Nestled in the stunning French landscape is the quiet town of Sanary-sur-Mer. Here, a mansion with a swimming pool and a spacious, attractive house housed Jean-Pierre and his wife, Beatrice IV, during the turmoil of their divorce trial in 2005. The couple was struggling with a serious crisis in their marriage. They finally realized that divorce was the only solution. Beatrice, in a heartfelt confession, revealed that Jean-Pierre was her greatest love in her life. Despite the turmoil, she still harbors deep faith that their relationship will endure. In the early days, the couple cherished their moments together, their love seemingly strengthened by the birth of their daughter Angelique, which seemed to strengthen their relationship even more. Jean-Pierre held a prominent position as an executive in his father's construction company, where his father praised his professional abilities, even referring to him as a recognized executive, blessed with divine talent. Beatrice often said her husband was a passionate man. Likewise, Beatrice herself is vibrant, dynamic, and strikingly beautiful. Married for nearly 2 decades, they seem to have achieved perfect harmony. However, those familiar with their story know better. The cracks in Jean-Pierre and Beatrice's relationship deepened. Even though they are still together, the mutual understanding and connection they once had has faded. An important figure in their lives was Jean-Claude Lié, a longtime friend of the family. Jean-Claude and Jean-Pierre have been inseparable since their teens, growing up together in the same neighborhood. Jean-Pierre even secured a position for Claude at his father's company. As the story unfolds, we learn that shortly before the tragedy, Claude was deeply involved in the construction of an addition to the Fours family home, during which time he became almost a fixture day in their family. This close-knit trio celebrates holidays and special occasions together, marking a seemingly unbreakable bond until events lead to their tragic end. As divorce proceedings took place in 2005, Jean-Claude became increasingly attached to his best friend's family. He visited frequently, bringing alcoholic beverages and appearing too eager to get his friend Jean-Pierre drunk. Jean-Pierre's daughter Angelique becomes increasingly suspicious of Jean-Claude's motives, suspecting that he may be trying to isolate her father to spend time alone with her mother Beatrice. Her concerns seemed reasonable as family tensions escalated. The situation becomes even worse when Jean-Pierre discovers Beatrice is having an affair with her former boss, making divorce inevitable. Amid this tumultuous time, Jean-Claude quickly transitions from friends to Beatrice's new romantic partner, even though they are not yet officially divorced. Beatrice needed support, and she found it in Jean-Claude, extinguishing any hope of reconciliation between her and Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre pale, and the atmosphere becomes increasingly tense as Jean-Claude grows closer to Beatrice during the divorce process. This complex web of relationships turned dark on the night of March 15th, 2005, when Jean-Pierre disappeared. 2 days later, Angelique reported her father missing to the local gendarmerie. She emphasized that her father had no plans to travel and was generally a homebody, making his disappearance all the more alarming considering his upcoming court date over the property battle in custody of their children. With no clues and evidence in the house, the initial investigation hit a dead end. However, attention quickly turned to those closest to Jean-Pierre, including Beatrice and Jean-Claude. In particular, Beatrice became the focus due to her emotional attitude, vague and contradictory statements to the police, and her inability to clarify her conflicting reactions. Although she denied any involvement in her husband's disappearance, discrepancies in her testimony raised suspicions. Despite mounting pressure, investigators were unable to break her, and Angelique staunchly defended her mother, insisting she was innocent. 2 weeks after Jean-Pierre disappeared without a trace, a suspicious transaction involving the purchase of a classic car, registered in his name and financed on his account, was uncovered. Authorities quickly put this vehicle on their watch list. Luckily, it didn't take long to figure it out. Surveillance footage shows that immediately after purchase, the car was driven straight to the Fours neighborhood. A thorough search of the area ensued. The car was discovered abandoned and burned in the unfinished basement of a building, in an apparent attempt by Jean-Claude to destroy it. However, his plan failed when the car did not burn completely. Remarkably, it still contains important clues that could launch the investigation into the puzzling disappearance of Jean-Pierre. Inside the trunk, a bloody towel was found. DNA testing later confirmed that the blood was indeed Jean-Pierre's. Similar traces were also discovered inside the vehicle, including in the back seat. The scene painted a grim picture. Jean-Pierre had been seriously injured and was likely carried into the car, both inside the cabin and the trunk. The possibility of him succumbing to his injuries seemed increasingly likely. This car, purchased in his name and with his money, is now being used to store evidence of his kidnapping and possible murder, prompting officials to launch a major investigation awake. Local police began monitoring communications between Beatrice and Jean-Claude, who were living together in the missing man's house. Their relationship has become deeper, beyond just regular dating. What's worrying is that investigators soon intercepted conversations in which the couple spoke ill of Jean-Pierre. On April 6, 2005, they were arrested. At the preliminary hearing, although they admitted to a long-standing affair, they denied any role in his disappearance. The absence of Jean-Pierre's body posed a significant challenge for the prosecution. During his imprisonment, Jean-Claude constantly wrote letters to the court and investigators, vehemently asserting his innocence and criticizing his relationship with Beatrice as a serious mistake. After 10 months, Beatrice was born released on bail, but Jean-Claude remains in custody. To date, there is no evidence linking Beatrice to the crime, and Jean-Pierre's body has not been found. Not wanting to remain passive as the trial approached, the widow went to the police to tell what really happened to Jean-Pierre. Now let's stir up some intrigue with a thought-provoking question. What could motivate someone to commit such a heinous act against someone they once cared about? Could it be pure greed, or perhaps a dark secret too tempting to keep hidden? On November 14, 2007, she entered the courtroom, flanked by family members who came to support her. Among them, her daughter's anxiety was clearly visible. In a surprising turn of events that caught everyone off guard, Beatrice announced that she knew the whereabouts of her missing husband's remains. This revelation sent shockwaves through her husband and caused the trial to be adjourned to allow authorities to follow up on this vital clue. Nearly 3 years have passed since her husband disappeared. Now, with the support of law enforcement, Beatrice is standing on a notorious ledge at Cape Kai. This site is infamous, known to house the deceased. Indeed, many bodies had previously been discovered there. During this search, they found charred remains and a pair of blue sweatpants similar to those favored by Jean-Pierre among the debris. His family confirmed the identity of the clothes and sent them to forensic experts for further examination. Unfortunately, the remains were in such poor condition that the exact cause of death could not be determined. The reconstruction of events depends largely on Beatrice's testimony. Interestingly, the search team unearthed the bones of not one but 2 individuals at the base of the cliff. Among these remains were 2 skulls and a chaotically scattered pile of bone fragments. Nearby, a gold ring, earrings, and a bracelet were found, items later confirmed to belong to Jean-Pierre. Identifying both bodies proved difficult, but eventually the second victim was identified as a young woman, Dominique Ortiz. Dominique, known to be Jean-Claude's fiancée and pregnant at the time, mysteriously disappeared in Marseille in 2001. It is noteworthy that Jean-Pierre's acquaintance Jean-Claude was always a suspect. His gloomy and rude demeanor was further accentuated by a scar on his face that he attributed to a motorbike accident in the 1990s. His sister reported him to the police, accusing him of daily abuse and assault involving a knife wound to her thigh. Despite Jean-Claude's denials at trial, those who knew him described him as a master of deception, talented at concealing his manipulative nature and intense jealousy. It cannot be considered mere coincidence that the remains of two individuals are tied to the same suspect. Suspicion constantly surrounded Jean-Claude. Before committing his next crime, he meticulously planned the death of a 47-year-old friend, dumping the body in the same location. Prosecutors said the motive was jealousy, and that the man's tangled love triangle eventually brought him into confrontation with Jean-Pierre, who was considered a romantic rival. Jean-Claude is afraid of losing both the affection of his beloved and the common property to Jean-Pierre. At the important trial, Beatrice accused her lover of a cruel act. She recounted how, upon returning from a late shopping trip on the night of March 15th, she happened to witness a horrifying scene in her kitchen, just days before her divorce proceedings began. Head. Inside, she found her lover standing next to her husband's body, lying face down, appearing to have been hit from behind. He was barely alive, on the brink of death. Beatrice noticed his severe wound and bleeding. Clutched tightly in her lover's hand was a large meat cleaver. The kitchen window shattered and bloody debris was scattered across the floor. Despite her efforts to call for help, Jean-Claude forbade her, abruptly cutting off her questions, warning that ignorance would keep her out of trouble. During their brief exchange, her husband's life passed away. Fearing for her life after Jean-Claude threatens to move towards her with a knife, causes Beatrice to retreat. He then covered his deceased friend's face with a towel and forced Beatrice to help him move his body. They wrapped Jean-Pierre's head in a plastic bag to prevent further bloodstains and dragged the body to an abandoned building, hiding it behind construction materials. Beatrice is intimidated into silence under the threat of death. They used a new vehicle to transport the body to Cape Cay, where they dumped it off a cliff, hearing a sickening thud as it hit the rocks. After H. With that action, Jean-Claude hugged Beatrice tightly, shook her, and asked her thoughts on the events that occurred during the night. Too shocked, she remained silent, believing that she would be his next victim. He then forced her back into the car, driving her home in a state of terror, not knowing his destination or intentions. Surprisingly, they return to her home, where he begins an oppressive life together, monitoring her every move and making sure she never reaches out for help. Under constant duress, Beatrice felt powerless to challenge him or report the crime. He then hinted that connections in Marseille could make her disappear for a fee, and even threatened to destroy her sister's restaurant to avoid justice. During this ordeal, he revealed his true monstrous nature. What do you think motivated Jean-Claude's actions the most? Jealousy, fear of loss, or pure malice? Here are two thoughts. 1. Jealousy. His actions are primarily motivated by deep-seated jealousy that clouds his judgment and leads to violent results. 2. Fear of loss. Perhaps it was the fear of losing both his lover and his financial stability that pushed him to the brink. After hearing the accusation, Jean-Claude immediately denied it, considering his mistress a liar. The lawyer representing Jean-Pierre in the divorce proceedings also questioned Beatrice's account. According to him, Jean-Pierre confided shortly before his death that his wife was manipulative and unfaithful, and he just wanted to end their toxic relationship as quickly as possible. The prosecutor's office supported this version, believing that Beatrice was at least an accomplice or even actively participated in the crime. She could have reported it to the police during her first interrogation, but she remained silent, only making a statement nearly 3 years later. Some witnesses claimed to have heard her make ambiguous comments to her husband. She was clearly upset about his intention to end the affair, which gave her a strong motive to kill. Their daughter, Angelica, continued to support her mother, while the deceased's relatives took their side. This split caused a rift in the family even before the trial began. By the time the hearing began on September 15, 2008, Angelica and her grandparents were firmly on opposing sides. Angelica later testified, insisting that her mother was never abusive or manipulative. She portrayed Beatrice as the victim of Jean-Claude's abusive behavior, claiming that her mother was too depressed and scared to refuse his request to help hide the body and evidence. Beatrice's former boss, who was discovered to be having an affair with her, also testified. Although he denied their relationship, he expressed admiration for Beatrice, describing her as a professional and trustworthy person, incapable of manipulation due to her gentle nature. In the end, Beatrice herself testified. Her lengthy and confusing statement was filled with unnecessary comments, which a forensic psychiatrist interpreted as signs of hysteria, revealing her to be a frightened and desperate woman. Beatrice wanted to justify herself, blaming everyone, including Jean-Pierre's relatives, for not valuing him as highly as she did. This statement was considered a personal insult by the victim's family. Angelique argues that outsiders, including extended family who gather only on vacation, lack any real insight into the private dynamics of their family lives and are therefore ill-equipped enough to assess the situation accurately. Meanwhile, Jean-Claude blames Beatrice, portraying himself as the real victim when she set him up. However, his claims of being framed were met with skepticism, especially after the discovery of a second body further implicated the two in a deeper conspiracy. As the accusations flew, each defendant accused the other of falsehood. Jean-Claude even tried to refute the evidence by claiming the body found was not that of Jean-Pierre, a claim quickly refuted by DNA testing. A forensic expert later detailed injuries to Jean-Pierre's skull that suggested he had been attacked from behind, consistent with Beatrice's account and suggesting that Jean-Claude was likely such deception is due to his physical disadvantage compared to his friend. In a dramatic display, the prosecution presented the victim's actual bones, highlighting defensive wounds and cuts on his hands, which clearly shook the family but was considered necessary to illustrate the brutality of the murder. At the same time, the tragic fate of Jean-Pierre's fiancée, whose remains were also found and discussed, added poignancy to the trial. The entire case, filled with emotional testimonies, forensic evidence, and shocking revelations, makes us ponder, how strange family relationships could I become so tragically toxic? What do you think could cause someone to betray their closest relationships? The prosecution proposed a sentence of 20 years in prison for Beatrice and 30 years for Jean-Claude. After the closing arguments, as the jury deliberated, the media approached Jean-Claude, who maintained his innocence, expressing his desire for a quick resolution. He lamented the 3.5 years he spent behind bars and feared the prospect of decades more. Despite his hopes, the jury convicted both defendants, sentencing them to the terms recommended by the prosecution, 20 years for Beatrice and 30 years for Jean-Claude. While Jean-Pierre's family found the sentences mostly satisfactory, they believed Beatrice deserved a harsher sentence, comparable to Jean-Claude, for her role in the crime. This view was not shared by Beatrice's family. What do you think about the jury's decision? Does Beatrice deserve the same sentence as Jean-Claude? 1. Beatrice must receive the same sentence because she is also one of the two accomplices who caused her ex-husband's death. 2. A 20-year sentence is appropriate because she was not the person who directly caused the death, and she was also threatened by Jean-Claude not to let her tell the truth. Let's discuss this matter further. Your insights can take us deeper into the intricacies of this case. In this riveting episode of the True Crime documentary series, we delve into the tense moments leading up to the appeal trial of Beatrice, a widow caught up in a controversial murder trial. Her lawyer, filled with hope, filed an appeal that attracted considerable public attention, keeping viewers and readers hooked on all the developments. Before the hearing, Beatrice's defense attorney spoke to the media, confidently asserting that the publicity surrounding the case almost warranted a review of the case. When Beatrice returned to the courtroom with her co-defendant lover, her choice of outfit, a flamboyant ensemble complete with colorful hair and makeup, made a splash, evoking the mood of happier than the seriousness of a murder trial. This unusual attitude did not sit well with the jury, as defendants often had a more subdued appearance. During the proceedings, the defense pointed to a lack of direct evidence against Beatrice, while the prosecution relied primarily on the victim's remains, which provided little clarity on the events leading up to the incident, his death. The emotional strain was too much for Beatrice, who fainted in court, a warning that she had overexerted herself physically and mentally. The plot thickened as the prosecution offered new insights, revealing that the so-called grieving widow had bought a new car shortly before the crime. This transaction, initially believed to have been carried out by the deceased himself, was actually carried out by Beatrice, probably to facilitate the disposal of the body. This revelation prompted the prosecution to request a harsher sentence. In his client's defense, Beatrice's lawyer argued that she was forced to buy the car by her lover, who plotted the crime out of jealousy. Despite these claims, Beatrice maintained her innocence with a simple but resolute statement, denying any role in her husband's tragic end. The trial lasted 3 grueling days, culminating in the chief prosecutor asking for a 30-year prison sentence for both Beatrice and her accomplice, Jean-Claude. After more than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury upheld Beatrice's original 20-year sentence, while Jean-Claude's sentence was reduced from 30 years to 25, leaving the victim's family extremely disappointed. This decision caused many to question whether justice would truly be served, as both sentences would be served concurrently, limiting Jean-Claude's prison time to a maximum of 25 years. Russell Williams was born on March 7, 1963 in Worcestershire, England. After his parents divorced when he was 6 years old, his father, Christine Noni, remarried, and they moved to Scarborough, Ontario, a borough in Toronto. Williams began high school at Birchmount Collegiate, then transferred to Upper Canada College. In 1979, when his father found a new job in Korea, his family moved there. However, Russell remained at Upper Canada College to complete his final 2 years. After high school, Williams attended the University of Toronto, Scarborough, majoring in economics and political science. He graduated in 1986 with a Bachelor of Arts degree. On June 1, 1991, Williams married Mary Elizabeth Herman. Avid runners and photographers, the Williamses also enjoy golf. The couple moved to Orleans, a suburb of Ottawa, in July 2006. At that time, Williams was assigned to the Air Force Requirements Bureau at the National Defense Command. He served on the Strategic and Tactical Airlift Capability Project and Fixed-Wing Search and Rescue. According to neighbor Larry Jones, Williams often stayed alone at their home, appearing somewhat lonely as he rarely entertained friends there, perhaps only a few times a year. One of Williams's acquaintances, Jeff Farquhar, recalled going to Cozy Cove shortly after Williams bought it. "I remember being there when he first bought it. I think the deal had just closed, and he called me to come look at the house and show me around. And he was really excited to get a little house." Williams was famous as the Drill Sergeant, a nickname that reflected both his authoritative demeanor and his penchant for mischief. In addition to his tough exterior, he is also a mischievous person, known for his sneaky and surprising practical jokes. One of his favorite antics is spending hours hiding in his roommate's closet. This odd habit eventually became a popular trend in his community. Picture this. A roommate walks in, sits at his desk, engrossed in work, and then, boom! Williams will scream, sending his roommate reeling in shock. It has become so popular that you may wonder if Russ started this trend. Perhaps so, but there is nothing evil to infer from it. Jeff, a close friend of Williams, shared further insights into Williams' personal history. As a child of divorce, Williams rarely talked about his family situation. Throughout his boarding school and college years, Williams often found himself isolated on weekends and holidays, choosing to stay on campus instead of visiting family. His romantic life is equally bleak. Jeff recalls Williams' significant college romance that ended painfully. "I've never seen him in so much pain in his life," Jeff commented. From around the age of 20 to 30, Williams seemed to steer clear of romantic relationships, a decade of solitude that spoke volumes about the depth and pain of his earlier life. After the breakup, Williams became even more private, keeping her personal life a secret. Topics like his parents' divorce were taboo, and even when as his best friend, Jeff still respected those boundaries. In an unexpected turn of events, despite 4 years of economics and a promising academic record, Williams made a startling announcement after graduation. He wanted to join the Air Force to become a pilot. Jeff recounted, confused by the sudden change. "What the hell are you doing all this for?" This sudden decision worries Jeff because it seems that Williams may have given up on his ambitions. Now let's think. What do you think made Williams suddenly switch from studying economics to aspiring to become a pilot? Is it a quest for adventure, or perhaps a deeper, unspoken reason? But what's special is that Williams turned his dream into a tangible reality in the years that followed, becoming one of Canada's most respected pilots. His career was marked not by dogfighting and fighter jets, but by flying into conflict zones, conducting emergency evacuations, and flying private jets carrying prime ministers and public figures. Famous, domestic and international languages. Despite life's ups and downs, Williams remains the steadfast friend Jeff has known since college, when he was an avid trumpet player and an enthusiastic wedding photographer. However, there are still aspects of his life that Williams keeps private, such as the announcement of his upcoming marriage. It was completely unexpected. Of course, I was happy for him, but he had never mentioned dating anyone since we were in college, at least since our second year of college. Williams has been married to Mary Elizabeth Harmon for nearly 2 decades. She forged a successful path as a charity executive. However, their careers forced them to marry long distance. She lived in Ottawa, and he was stationed at Base Trenton. This has led to the relationship between the two gradually falling apart. Returning to reality, on a weekend in the fall of 2007, a series of unusual break-ins began to take place. Williams was in his small house and neighbor Larry Jones was next door when he received a panicked call from his daughter who lived nearby. Returning home from a party, she encounters an intruder. As she moved from the garage into the house, a tall figure rushed past her, jumped over the backyard fence, and disappeared into the woods. She initially dismissed it as a harmless prank by local children, as nothing seemed wrong. Little did she know that it would take years for the full truth to be revealed in a crime documentary. It's real. In 2007, according to criminal documents, a series of strange break-ins began to attract public attention. These robberies, particularly involving women's clothing and underwear, occurred primarily in the Williams community, especially along Cozy Cove Lane in Tweed. Similar events were recorded near Ottawa, and they often went undetected for a very long time afterwards. Even when Williams took command at Trenton as his responsibilities increased, overseeing the thousands of soldiers and regularly appeared in public, but the frequency of these break-ins increased after he was promoted in July 2009. According to police records, within 2 months of his first promotion as wing commander, 10 more similar incidents took place. Despite his increasing official duties, Colonel Williams continued to project an image of serenity. He remains active for the greater good, participating in fun events with hockey icon Johnny Bauer to support military families and campaigning to send care packages to service members stationed abroad. He also worked to foster positive community relations, especially by arranging flights for local officials to remote northern regions. The story took a darker turn when Colonel Williams returned from a trip to the North Pole on September 16, 2009. The very next day, police reported a sinister escalation in these criminal activities. On September 17th, a young mother reported a horrifying incident. At about 1 a.m., while sleeping next to her 8-week-old baby, a man entered the house, assaulted her, took pictures, and then left for about 10 minutes, 3 a.m. Notably, Colonel Williams returned to base the same day, overseeing the Guinness World Records aircraft expansion effort. As the investigation into the attack progressed, another break-in occurred undetected the next night at the same residence. An odd pattern of revisiting a previously reported crime scene appear. The next day, at Belleville Arena, Colonel Williams made a public appearance, participating in the opening game of the junior hockey season. The following week, this pattern continued with intensity. The third incident at a previously targeted location coincided with Williams's continued closeness to the Secretary of Defense. The report against Williams shows that by the end of September 2009, his crimes in Tweed had escalated. That month ended with 2 additional conflicts added to a nearby settlement and a third mission in the same location. One of the incidents that turned these activities particularly violent. A woman home alone was confronted by an intruder who blindfolded and tied her up, forcing her to undress, and forced her to kiss him. He had to endure both physically and mentally during 2 hours of noise and pain. While extremely scared, she asked about her fate, and that person suddenly coldly replied, "No need to know." Even though she was scared, she still bravely told the police that she thought she recognized his voice but decided not to reveal his identity. According to Larry Jones, Ontario Provincial Police heavily patrolled Cozy Cove Lane the next day. They knocked on every door, and if no one was home, they returned the next day to follow up. When they arrived at Williams' door, there was no answer. The officer then moved to Larry Jones' home. He asked, "Who lives next door?" I said, "Russ Williams, commanding officer of CFB Trenton." "Well, I guess there's no point in looking at that guy. It's okay." Meanwhile, couple Howard Gray and Moran Cook lived just a few kilometers apart. but news of the incident spread quickly. This is because the area has deteriorated and people in Tweed believe that one person must be responsible for both attacks. Obviously, the two things are related. Police soon focused on a Tweed resident who lived next door to Russell Williams. Then the Ontario Provincial Police took a cautious approach and arrested Larry Jones. The second attack victim later thought she recognized her attacker's voice and guessed it was Larry Jones's. According to Jones, he went through a 3.5-hour interrogation, fingerprinting, DNA testing, a survey that lasted more than 3 hours and weeks of surveillance before police finally told him that he is not a man. They are looking. Moran Cook arrived home to prepare for his birthday party at a friend's house nearby. She thought her husband had rushed upstairs to change clothes, but when she entered the bedroom, she discovered something unexpected. The bedside drawers and small tables are all open. Not only were the drawers opened, but some personal items stored in them were also missing, including her intimate toys. At first, they thought someone in the family was joking. However, when Howard Gray came to pick her up, she realized it wasn't a family joke. Shocked and worried, they debated whether to call the police or not. The morning after the party, Gray once again drove Moran back to her residence. Before starting her workday, she went to the office to make a few copies. Suddenly, a scream rang out, urgent and primal, warning her husband that something was wrong. He quickly ran upstairs and saw her shaking in shock. As he entered the office, his eyes were drawn to an old, often unused computer that now had its screensaver turned off and displayed a menacing, bold message. "Go ahead, call the police. Police. I want to show the judge your concern." It was like a scene ripped from a Hollywood horror movie. Panicked, Moran ran into her bedroom, where she discovered 2 empty drawers, evoking another scream of terror. Then she suddenly realized someone had broken into their house the night before. Maybe that person had hidden in the closet, locked the kitchen door, and then disappeared into the night. At that point, I was sure someone was targeting me specifically, Moran recalls. It wasn't just an intrusion. The message was personal, fueled by anger, like there was a deeper intention than just stealing my underwear. Her thoughts also linked this event to the previous intimate assault in Tweed. Despite her concerns, Belleville police began investigating the break-in. In response to the fear gripping the community, Moran took action. "I have spread the message to all the women in the area and where I work on base to lock the doors. Just lock them," she warned. "There are definitely dangerous people out there." Meanwhile, a gruesome body was discovered about 30 kilometers from the Air Force Base. A lifeless body identified as Marie France Como, 38 years old. According to her boyfriend, Alan Plant, she is a free spirit. Marie is a corporal at Canadian Forces Base Trenton, residing in Brighton, Ontario. She has the perfect job as a military flight attendant. In fact, she was recently a crew member on a flight carrying Prime Minister Stephen Harper on a state visit to the Far East. When she turned around, Alan was talking to her. She flew over from Trenton Pacific to Japan. Then from there, when they came back, they flew across the Atlantic. So she went around the world. I don't know many people who have done that, so I'm very curious and happy for her because her dream has come true. The initial suspicion of suicide, suggested by suffocation, was soon overturned in favor of a darker conclusion. Murder as prime suspect? It was her boyfriend who found her and alerted the authorities. He was interviewed on the day of the tragedy of Marie's death, setting the stage for a complex investigation. In a strangely discordant scene, Colonel Russell Williams is seen being handcuffed and led away. All smiles in what appears to be part of a publicity stunt for a United Way fundraising campaign locally in Trenton. This incident occurred just as news of Marie's death spread throughout the community. Williams also expressed his condolences in a compassionate letter of condolence to Marie's bereaved family, although, however, Williams refused to attend her funeral. In the following months, his life seemed to resume its pace with a packed schedule that included the Olympic torch relay and seasonal celebrations. However, it was during his strategic consultations on disaster relief after the devastating earthquake in Haiti that crucial evidence came to light, shedding light on the grim secrets lurking behind Russell Williams' public persona.
This macabre series of events raises a provocative question. How could someone so publicly dedicated to service lead such a double life? What do you think leads to such a strong dichotomy in behavior? "I felt a thrill," a close associate of Williams recalled, "and I felt the same way, something's wrong." This feeling of unease increased each time Colonel Williams drove from CFB Trenton to his
Small home in Tweed, Ontario. On his way is the house of Jessica Lloyd, a vivacious 27-year-old girl who lives independently. Her brother Andy described Jessica as friendly and vivacious, and her house was along the route Williams took and seemed to be just another stop on his journey. Jessica arrived home on January 28, 2010 after a night out. Just before retiring for the evening, she sent one last text to a friend, one that sealed the contact. Finally with her. That same night, at about 3 a.m., two locals drove south on Highway 37 toward Belleville to pick up a shipment. As they passed Jessica's house under the eerie light of the full moon and the cold air, they had no idea they were walking on the brink of a pivotal moment in the crime story documentary, This Is a Real Crime. Lyle Barker, struggling with fatigue, noticed an SUV parked some distance away in a field, a considerable distance from nearby roads or houses. Unaware of the severity of the scene they witnessed, he and his cousin continued on, not realizing that it would be some time before the full extent of what they had witnessed that night became apparent. Clear and cold. That same day, Andy Lloyd received a distressing phone call from his mother Jessica, who had not arrived at work as expected. Without a second's delay, Andy went to her residence. It's strange because everything is intact. Her identification papers, her cell phone, her wallet, items she usually doesn't leave behind if she goes out, he explained, confused by the situation. Her disappearance. In the following days, Jessica's face became a familiar sight in many media outlets as her disappearance attracted attention. A comprehensive search ensued, using a police helicopter and a search and rescue team from CFB Trenton. Despite these extensive efforts, a critical link remains missing. Authorities have yet to connect her case to an earlier intimate assault in Tweed, the murder of Marie-France Como 2 months ago, or the break-in on Moran Cook's birthday. At that time, they didn't have any connections, a local resident commented. My case is still unknown, and I suspect they also consider the incident with the Tweed girls. Their focus is just finding a missing girl. The situation changed when Barker, after completing a trucking job with his cousin, noticed Jessica's face plastered on every missing person poster. Seeing police activity around a house on Highway 37, they recognized it as the house adjacent to the field where Barker had earlier seen an SUV parked in the dark, the same location where Jessica had disappeared. This observation prompted Lyle to contact the authorities. When they arrived at the scene, they saw that the tire tracks were still clearly visible. OKC preserved thanks to the cold weather and no new snow falling yet. Ontario Provincial Police, OPP, responded by setting up roadblocks to check tires along the highway. Exactly 1 week after Jessica went missing on Thursday, February 4th, they stopped the SUV driven by Colonel Russell Williams. After checking his tires, they released him. But unbeknownst to Williams, he was under secret police surveillance from that point forward. The disappearance of Jessica Lloyd not only escalated tensions in Tweed, but also cast a shadow of suspicion on Larry Jones. On Sunday, February 7th, while settling into his new home in Ottawa, Russell Williams received an unexpected call from police, urging him to come to the Ottawa Police Service for questioning. Believing they wanted to discuss his neighbor, Larry Jones, Williams was caught off guard when, upon arrival, he learned that unique tire tracks on his SUV were discovered near Jessica Lloyd's residence. What followed was a grueling 9-hour interrogation in which Williams, under pressure, revealed information that would shatter the Lloyd family. He knew where Jessica's body was. This devastating news was not made public until Williams led police to her body the next morning, while Lloyd's family was extremely worried and only learned the identity of the murderer at a press conference. Later, in an intense interrogation segment recorded on January 28 and 29, John Norman, an OPP expert on shoe prints, likened the evidence to fingerprints, emphasizing the precision of the forensic technique. Their medicine. Norman explains, like fingerprints, we extract distinct features from one fingerprint and compare them with other fingerprints. These are identical. Your car is close to home Jessica Lloyd. Your shoes went there. He then pressed Williams for honesty amid growing tensions, signaling a rapid escalation in the investigation, highlighting the dire situation Williams was in. The evidence was damning, leaving Williams with no viable rebuttal. He acknowledged the severity of the situation, saying, "This has escalated beyond my control. I came here to cooperate in hopes of some understanding, but obviously you know I was there." The questioning took an even grimmer turn when the lead investigator mentioned ongoing searches at Williams' residence in Ottawa and the impending connection of his DNA to a crime scene, another case, making it even more urgent for Williams to provide an explanation as his window of opportunity to influence the story is rapidly closing. Why do you think Russell Williams decided to cooperate in the interrogation? Was it a strategic move to gain some control over the situation, or was it compelling evidence that left him no other choice? At 3 p.m. on February 7th, Williams was questioned at police headquarters by OPP Detective Sergeant James Smith. Detectives meticulously presented the facts to Williams, ensuring he understood the extent of the incident, the severity of your situation. Take a moment and hear me out, okay? Imagine this. The moment the DNA results confirm the match, the moment the phone rings or someone knocks on the door, your credibility evaporates. Do you understand how reliability works? I know you're sharp and this seems obvious, but be patient because I can see your mind racing. This has happened many times before. The crux of the matter is when we get that DNA evidence or when the shoe and tire experts confirm it, the investigation is over. Then credibility. Where do you stand, Russell? You have very few options left. By 7:45 p.m., after being presented with evidence of tire tracks and shoe prints related to Lloyd's disappearance, Williams began to confess to his crime. He revealed his role in dozens of crimes, including multiple break-ins and sexual assaults, in and around Tweed, Ontario, at locations near properties owned by Williams and his wife, T.A. He also revealed where police were able to find evidence hidden inside his Ottawa home, including hidden souvenirs, mugshots of his victims and photos of him posing in their underwear, video files of his attacks and murders, and other evidence. Williams then identified on a map where he dumped Lloyd's body, leading them to that location early the next morning. Along with the murder charges, Williams was charged with breaking and entering, forcibly confining and sexually assaulting 2 other women in connection with 2 separate home invasions near Tweed, which occurred in September 2009. According to reports, the women were tied up in their home and Williams took pictures of them. He was also charged with the death of Corporal Marie-France Comeau, a technician 37-year-old military traffic officer based at CFB Trenton, who was found dead in her home in late November 2009. Hours after Williams' arrest was announced, police agencies across the country reopened unsolved murder cases involving young women in areas where he had been stationed. According to news reports, police began looking into other unsolved cases based on a full statement Williams provided to police. In addition to the 4 main incidents, the investigation included inquiries into 48 thefts of women's underwear dating back to 2006. Inside his Ottawa home, police discovered stolen underwear stored keep it neat, cataloged and hidden. A week after Williams' arrest, investigators reported that along with hidden memorabilia and other evidence found in his home, they had matched a print from one of the crime scenes: murder with his boot. In April 2010, Williams was placed on suicide watch at the Quint Detention Center in Napanee, Ontario, after he attempted suicide by stuffing a cardboard roll of toilet paper down his throat. With the sentence secured, the Canadian forces took measures including the immediate dismissal of Russell Williams, the recall and forfeiture of his pay from the date of his arrest, the stripping of his medals, and the execution, take all other applicable disciplinary measures. It was made clear that there would be no separate court-martial because Canadian law prohibits double jeopardy. It is also important to note that, according to the Pensions Act, his pension cannot be revoked and a court-martial will not affect these accrued benefits. He was sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole eligibility for 25 years and will be immediately transferred to Kingston Penitentiary, with the possibility of solitary confinement upon arrival. What a relief to see justice served for Jessica, for Marie-France, and for Tweed's victims, as well as all of his brokenness, expressed one relieved community member. It's finally over and we're very grateful for that. Maybe now we can start moving forward. Williams appeared before the Ontario Court of Justice in Belleville via video link from the Quint Detention Center on July 22, 2010, where his next court appearance was set for August 26th. Again via video link, Williams waived his right to a preliminary examination and therefore scheduled his next hearing in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice for October 7, 2010. Williams' lawyers later announced that his client would plead guilty to all the charges against him. On October 18, 2010, Williams pleaded guilty to all charges. On the first day of Williams' trial and guilty plea, details of other sexual assaults he had committed emerged, including that of a new mother who was awakened by a blow to her first while she and her child were sleeping in her house. The first day of the trial revealed that Williams also had pedophilic tendencies, stealing underwear from girls as young as 9 years old. He committed 82 home invasions involving sexual interests and attempted break-ins between September 2007 and November 2009. Williams progressed from breaking and entering to non-penetrative sexual assault, and finally to rape and murder. He followed detailed police reports of the crimes he committed, recorded his crimes, kept photos and videos, and even left notes and messages for his victims. The criminal's wife, Mary Elizabeth Harriman, was not present at the trial, but her husband's guilt made her life difficult. In addition to learning that her husband of 20 years turned out to be a thief who stole women's underwear, killed 2 people, and attacked 2 others, Harriman also had to face a lawsuit. One of the victims attacked by Williams, who was lucky enough to survive, filed a lawsuit against the former colonel and his wife demanding compensation of 2.45 million Canadian dollars. She not only wants to demand compensation from Williams for the crime and the mental harm caused to her, but also accuses Harriman and Williams of illegally transferring assets to avoid monetary compensation awards, may be available in the future. Immediately after Williams' arrest, he and his wife divided their assets. The cheap house in Tweed went to Williams, and Harriman agreed to pay her husband $62,000 for his share of the more expensive house down the street. When the press reported on Williams' case, many Canadian citizens called for the death penalty, which the country abolished in 1976. However, he may still have the right to be released in 2035, age 72. Williams was initially detained at Kingston Penitentiary in the prison's solitary confinement unit. After the prison began the closing process, he was transferred to Port Cartier Institution, a maximum security prison in Port Cartier, Quebec. We will review the evidence, listen to witness statements, and work to solve the remaining mysteries. Are you curious about this investigation? Amidst the dynamic hustle and bustle of the streets of Kuala Lumpur, against the backdrop of the city and its vibrant nightlife, the life of a young model met a tragic end under extremely confusing circumstances. This disaster opens up a blurred line between an accident and an act of intentional murder, turning the situation into a story full of doubts and unanswered questions. Ivana Smith, an emerging talent in the fashion industry, tragically lost her life and was enveloped by a cloud of uncertainty. Her fate took a dangerous turn, causing a storm of speculation as detectives followed her last traces and learned of conflicting stories. Ivana Smith was born on January 14, 1999 in Card, Netherlands, to Marcelino and Karen Smith, a couple of mixed Indonesian and Dutch descent. She has an older brother, Randy. Raised in Malaysia by her grandparents, Hendrik and Susan Smith, as a child, Ivana spent her early school years in the state of Penang. With her glamorous looks, she enjoyed a vibrant social life in Penang until grade 10. After that, she briefly returned to the Netherlands to pursue acting and modeling. However, homesickness brought her back to Malaysia, a place she considered home, surrounded by loved ones. Throughout adulthood, Ivana pursued various interests such as studying guitar, piano, and taekwondo, in addition to practicing on the catwalk. She became famous and started participating in beauty contests when she was 13 years old. At the age of 15, she participated in the Malaysian Supermodel Search Contest and won second place. As an adult, she delved deeper into the modeling world, working with major brands, including Chanel. Well aware of the darker aspects of the industry, Ivana's grandparents closely followed her career, accompanying her on every mission. They enforced a strict curfew and closely monitored her social interactions to make sure she stayed on track. Her grandmother also meticulously managed her diet, maintaining high nutritional standards with vegetarian options until the age of 13. Ivana knew that Kuala Lumpur was the perfect place to start her modeling career, where there were many opportunities such as appearing on magazine covers, walking runways, and starring in promotional photo shoots. This vibrant city is also a hotbed for models aspiring to become famous by mingling in the nightclubs frequented by casting directors and casting agents. During her search for stardom, Ivana accidentally met Lucas Kramer, a 21-year-old broker working for an American shipping company. Their friendship quickly blossomed into romance, and they soon moved in together. Lucas described Ivana as exceptionally cheerful, sharing that she once told her mother on the phone how worried she was about their relationship. However, everything changed on December 6, 2017. After having dinner with Lucas, Ivana decided to go into town to drink with other people. I took my sample, leaving Lucas behind because he was exhausted. She promised him that she would be home before 1 a.m. Before leaving between 9 and 10 p.m., she told Lucas about her plans. That night, after a short workout session at the gym, Lucas went to bed, not knowing that this would be the last time he would see Ivana. The next morning, Lucas woke up and found that Ivana was no longer by his side. Worried, he called her, and she quickly reassured him that she was safe at a friend's house after a long night. Lucas did not know that Ivana had actually gone to a club with an American couple, Alex Johnson, a cryptocurrency tycoon and founder of Everest World, and his wife Luna. Ivana lied to the couple and said she was 26 years old instead of 18 years old. The couple trusted her and left their only daughter with a babysitter to go drinking with Ivana at a nightclub until 3 a.m. They were spotted kissing and having a good time. The couple then allegedly spent the night with Ivana in the drug world until the next morning. Around 5:22 a.m., Alex was seen driving Ivana to his apartment at Johnson's Cap Square, where a drug-fueled party was taking place. Ivana even managed to send a selfie with Luna to Lucas around 7:30 a.m. without mentioning Alex. Lucas is then confused by a text message from Luna using Ivana's phone, claiming to be her friend and saying that Ivana is resting with her. His confusion increased when he received a selfie captioned "Relaxing at Home Girl." This caption caught him off guard because Ivana had never used such words before. She often says she's at her girlfriend's house but never uses the words chill and girl. Lucas's suspicions increased when he did not see Ivana return home and did not hear from her on WhatsApp. Tragedy struck when Lucas received a distressed call from one of Ivana's modeling acquaintances, revealing that Ivana had passed away. She was found dead and undressed around 3 p.m. on the same day, plummeted from the 20th floor of Alex and Luna's apartment to the 6th floor balcony. Authorities believe this was a sudden death, suggesting that Ivana took her own life or fell due to an accident. Further examination revealed that at the time of death, Ivana had drugs and alcohol in her system, which police believe caused the accidental fall. The investigation also involved the couple, who claimed not to know Ivana's whereabouts and confirmed that they were sleeping at the time. Luna detailed the sequence after their intimate early morning moment, saying that while she was getting her daughter ready for school, Ivana remained in bed with Alex. After leaving and returning to the apartment around 8:15 a.m., Luna saw Ivana still lying on the bed, started having sex again, and then went to sleep. Waking up at 12:25, Luna noticed Ivana's belongings scattered everywhere but did not think about her absence. It wasn't until police arrived at their door around 5 p.m. that the couple was informed of Ivana's grim fate. However, neither Lucas nor Ivana's family believed that her death was an accident or suicide. Instead, they emphasized the possibility that this was a calculated murder. Ivana's uncles, Fred and Jell Winold, argued that Ivana had no reason to self-harm. She was successful and happy with her life. Fred expressed his disbelief in the suicide or accident hypothesis and recalled Ivana's promise to attend the top model finale in Belgium. He also doubted the authenticity of the text messages Lucas received, pointing out strange language that Ivana had never used before. "I believe this message was not sent by Ivana. It was not the kind of terminology she used. We had never heard her say it before," he said. Ivana's grandfather, Frederick Smith, who had raised her with great affection, was deeply saddened by the news. He described discovering her body on the 6th floor, suspecting she had no shoes or underwear. Frederick is convinced that Ivana's death was a deliberate murder, possibly covered up by the police. He criticized the lack of photographic evidence or reports from the crime scene, suggesting a cover-up. Ivana's father, Marcel, contacted the Dutch ambassador to Interpol, disputing the plausibility of Ivana's unnoticed fall from the 20th floor, which went on for hours unnoticed. He speculated that the apartment's high railings and the absence of nearby witnesses indicated a murder staged as a suicide. He noted the strange timing and circumstances of her fall, and emphasized that Ivana, who was 1.81 meters tall, would have only fallen over the 1.20-meter-high railing by bending over, making the fall into unlikely love. Dissatisfied with the police response, Ivana's father enlisted the expertise of former police detective Mark Williams Thomas to delve into the mysterious circumstances surrounding her sudden death. Mark offers some surprising theories, specifically noting the lack of blood near Ivana's body. He suggested that her death may have occurred before her fall, suggesting foul play. Mark affirmed, "The intention for her to voluntarily jump off that balcony is unreasonable. This is not a suicide. She was injured before falling." He challenged the police explanation, pointing to evidence that Ivana was dead before the fall. Mark speculated about the events that occurred in the apartment after Ivana's roommate Luna left to take her daughter to school, saying, "It is possible that Ivana was drugged again or physically harmed. Something important happened right after Luna left. Maybe Ivana fell, or maybe she was assaulted," he revealed. Reacting to the ongoing uncertainties, Ivana's family requested a second autopsy. Pathologist Frank Vannon discovered severe injuries to Ivana's head and arms, along with traces of cocaine in her body. These injuries happened before she fell from the balcony. Maybe she slipped, or maybe someone hit her. Bruises like this only happen when the heart is still beating, he explained. During the process of identifying the body, Ivana's father noticed bruises on her neck that appeared to be fingerprints, indicating that someone had grabbed her by force. Contrary to the police suicide theory, Ivana's friend Lucas stated, "Ivana never used drugs herself. She led a healthy, active lifestyle, regularly going to the gym and enjoy regular drinks. Drugs have never been a part of her life," he clarified. Furthermore, Lucas vehemently denied the possibility of her committing suicide. "She was happy, really happy. I cannot accept that it was a suicide. If you ask me who is least likely to commit suicide, most, I would say, definitely Ivana. She always has a positive attitude," Lucas affirmed. However, Lucas decided not to give up and fought for Ivana's case, claiming that the police did not do their job well. The police assertion that it was a suicide following an accidental drug overdose and subsequent fall is unacceptable. They essentially closed the case without due diligence, Lucas argued. He also blamed the police for their lack of care and professionalism, especially for their failure to consult family or scrutinizing surveillance footage. "My frustration grew. Why haven't the police given a clear timeline? What do apartment surveillance cameras show? Was anyone else present at the time? It seems like no one is really considering these questions," he lamented. "The silence was deafening. A comprehensive police investigation is required and must be carried out immediately," Lucas concluded. Lucas also shared another aspect of the ongoing controversy, mentioning some text messages from a friend of Johnson's that were intended to sabotage the strong relationship between Lucas and Ivana. In one text message, the friend claimed she wanted to end their relationship and expressed nothing positive about him. However, Lucas dismissed these claims as completely false. Police and the Kuala Lumpur Medical Examiner's Court both concluded that Ivana's death was not due to a criminal act, but her family will challenge this ruling. The decision of the Medical Examiner's Court was made after reviewing the testimony of several witnesses related to the case. Even though they were summoned by the court, Alexander and Luna Johnson still decided not to appear in public. The presiding judge admitted some indications of possible guilt, but stated that it was still unclear exactly what happened between Ivana and the couple. Ignoring the Malaysian court's summons, Ivana's family took the American couple to the U.S. Civil Court in May 2019, filing a lawsuit for clarification and answers. In response to these allegations, the Johnson couple decided to legally object to Ivana's family's claims, asserting their innocence despite facing defamation accusations for a year and a half. The Smith family has suffered the devastating loss of Ivana, and getting involved in legal battles is the last thing they want. However, they find themselves forced to seek justice in court due to the ongoing allegations. The Johnsons are also suing Zaymon and his crew for spying on them through illegal means, bombarding Luna with invasive questions without regard for her privacy, and weathering revealing their whereabouts to thousands of people, putting them at risk of death threats. The couple expressed their difficult situation. "Now everyone knows where we live. We receive hate mail and death threats every day." Their legal actions extend to private investigator Mark Thomas, whom they accuse of manipulating evidence related to Ivana's death to derail the investigation and pressure witnesses, solely for his own personal gain. While Mark refused to comment on the allegations, Zaman, when questioned, claimed to know nothing about the allegations made by the Johnsons. Ivana's uncle Fred faces their enemies with unwavering determination, making it clear that their pursuit of justice will not be hindered by Johnson's threats. "There is no situation that can arise that would cause us as a family to be silent," he declared. "This will only strengthen our resolve further." At the end of 2019, the court determined that a third party was responsible for Ivana's death. The case later subsided somewhat, but regained public attention when the Netherlands began a deeper investigation, sparking a police murder probe in 2021. Prime Minister of Malaysia Ismail Sabri assured Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte that every effort would be made to speed up the search for the perpetrator. Facts regarding the tragic death of Ivana Smith in 2017. Ivana's family lawyer, Sabus, noted that Prime Minister Rutte had exerted significant pressure on Ismail to actively pursue justice for Ivana. As the investigation continues, the case remains open with countless remaining questions requiring definitive answers. Was Ivana's death just an accident or a meticulously orchestrated murder? Accident. Ivana's death was a heartbreaking accident. This view suggests that her fall was a serious consequence of the risky lifestyle associated with her profession and social environment. Murder. Ivana's death was not an accident but a deliberate act of violence. Evidence of her interactions on the night of her death, suspicious circumstances reported by those who last saw her, and inconsistencies in witness statements point to a more sinister scenario. This view holds that her death was staged, perhaps to silence her, or due to complicated personal or professional rivalries. As we conclude today's journey into the macabre mysteries of Kuala Lumpur's nightlife, let us reflect on the tragic fate of Ivana Smith, a young model whose life was tragically marred in incomprehensible circumstances. This case serves as a stark reminder of the vital importance of criminal awareness, law enforcement procedures, and personal safety measures. Our discussion today sheds light not only on the complexities of a potentially staged crime, but also on the importance of meticulous investigation by authorities. It's important for each of us to stay alert and informed, whether we're on the bustling city streets or navigating the glamorous but sometimes dangerous world of modeling. "72 hours ago, a devastating phone call shattered Jamaica's peace, bringing news no one could have anticipated," she recounted. "My niece on the other end of the line was sobbing uncontrollably. My niece said my dad just killed my mother. I was stunned, but somewhere deep inside I saw his jealousy evident. Ladies, heed my warning. Such men can become dangerously possessive. If you spot the first sign of trouble, run away." Jamaica Williams, 38, epitomizes the spirit of fun, unattached living. As a mother of 4, she cherishes every relationship with her family, especially her mother and sister, and is supported by a close-knit group of friends who support her every step in life. However, underneath this seemingly happy existence lies a grim reality. Jamaica is entangled in a toxic relationship with the man she first loved as a young man, the father of her 2 children. His threats of violence were frequent, but tragically, neither she nor her loved ones ever took his dark promises seriously. Then, in November 2023, their worst fears came true. What exactly happened on that fateful day? Who is responsible for the tragedy that befell Jamaica, and what pushed them to such extremes? We will delve into these questions shortly. Jamaica is not only a mother, she is also a friend to her 4 children, who appreciate her supportive and encouraging presence. The 17, 14, 12, and 7-year-olds all looked up at her. Her oldest child is a high school senior about to graduate, an event that Jamaica eagerly looks forward to, hoping to witness her son's proud walk across the stage. But on the evening of November 10th, 2023, a devastating event shattered the peace of Jamaica's family. At about 7 p.m., the peaceful streets of Missouri City in southwest Houston were ripped apart by the sound of emergency sirens as the Houston Police Department responded to a distressing 911 call from Jamaica's Bird Run Drive residents. It is known that a shot was fired at a resident. Police stormed the house, entering cautiously only to discover a grisly scene: the lifeless body of Jamaica Williams, 38, lying unconscious, her face riddled with bullets, bleeding profusely. Despite receiving immediate medical attention, she was declared dead at the scene, leaving her children motherless in a sudden and brutal moment. The grim news spread throughout the community as neighbors gathered outside the now gloomy house, eerily quiet, except for the stark contrast of an inviting Christmas tree visible through the front door is open. As the crime scene tape fluttered in the cold wind, Jamaica's family, filled with grief, arrived at the scene. Amid this chaos, Jatera Williams received a heartbreaking call from her 14-year-old niece, who along with her 12 and 7-year-old siblings witnessed the horrific incident. The children were clearly confused and were quickly placed under police protection, who then sought to find out who could have committed such a heinous act. The children pointed to Jamaica's boyfriend, their father, as the attacker. So what exactly is that? Motivate a person to commit such an act in front of their children? How do you think communities and especially children can cope with such a traumatic experience? Driven by a feeling of both shock and urgency, Jatera immediately drove to her sister's house. Throughout the trip, she remained on the phone, trying to calm her niece, who along with her 2 younger sisters were in an unimaginably tense situation. Jatera shared, "All I heard was my dad killed my mom and I couldn't believe it. I screamed and rushed to their house, trying to keep her calm in the midst of the chaos." When they arrived, law enforcement and reporters learned that Christopher Lee Levels, the ex-boyfriend, appeared dazed and confused after the shooting. Witnesses recounted how he looked at Jamaica's body in disbelief and exclaimed, "I can't believe I shot her," before fleeing the scene in her white Nissan Altima. Levels had a history of verbally abusing Jamaica, often very disrespectfully, although he was never physically violent. The couple had been lovers since high school, and despite their long-term relationship, they were still constantly threatening and verbally arguing, especially as their relationship deteriorated. The family indicated that despite a history of verbal threats, physical violence was never a part of their relationships, reporters said. Just 2 days before he was set to move away permanently, tragedy struck, leading the family to suspect Levels was responsible for Jamaica's untimely death. This incident serves as a grim reminder of the potential upheaval in relationships, highlighting the importance of recognizing warning signs and taking precautions to ensure safety. Regardless of some opinions, the downplaying of life-threatening behavior must be unequivocally condemned. Jamaica's family had convinced themselves that Levels' threats were just empty words. After all, he and Jamaica had children together. How could he intend to harm the mother of his children? Jamaica's sister, Jatera Williams, echoed this sentiment, expressing that Levels' fatal attack on Jamaica left everyone blind. "It was a real shock. He had been making threats recently, although we never really believed he would follow through," she admitted. In a separate chat, Jatera revealed more disturbing insights. She recalls discovering signs of impending doom after Jamaica opened up about her boyfriend's abusive past. His intense jealousy is evident, and Jatera fears it will lead to devastating consequences. "I'm stunned by this event, but I cannot say that it was completely unforeseen. His blind jealousy is clear to see," she commented. Delving into a story of profound grief and disturbing turns, let us reflect on the disturbing story between Jatera and Jamaica. On that fateful evening, as Jamaica prepared for a night out with friends, wearing classy outfits and applying makeup and straightening her hair as usual, it turned into a quarrel with Levels, her close boyfriend, her since high school. Despite their history of banal arguments and disputes, Jamaica found herself letting her guard down in anticipation of what would happen next. But things may have gone beyond her thoughts. She couldn't imagine that Levels was so overwhelmed with jealousy that when she was about to go out, he had bluntly ordered her to cancel her plans. The situation escalated quickly when he ominously declared, "You're not going anywhere," and coldly brandished the gun. In a moment of losing his temper, Levels opened fire, shooting Jamaica straight in the face. Jamaica collapsed, her life slipping away as her 3 children witnessed the tragedy in horror. Fleeing the scene, Levels shocked the children, one of whom called his aunt to report the heartbreaking incident. Jamaica tragically passed away instantly, and the family quickly became suspicious of Levels, due to his previous threats to end Jamaica's life, as evidenced by the threatening messages he sent for her, accusing her of being unfaithful. Jamaica's children were in deep shock after a tragic incident. Struggling to come to terms with their mother's sudden passing, they are also haunted by the horrifying memory of their father's actions that led to her death. The unimaginable scene as they witnessed their mother being shot and life slowly and painfully ebbing away through her eyes left an indelible mark on their young minds. Amidst this chaos, the absence of Jamaica's eldest son during the incident created even more havoc, another layer for tragedy. Although he was not present, the impact on him was profound, as he lost an important figure in his life, just as he was facing important milestones in his life. Reflecting on his mother's irreplaceable role in his life, Jamaica's eldest son shared that his mother was not only his parent but also the foundation of his future aspirations. "She is very excited about my upcoming graduation and all that lies ahead for us," he revealed to the media, the pain evident in his voice. As a senior honor student, his academic achievements and extracurricular achievements were a source of immense pride for his mother. His mother reveled in his accomplishments, from sporting events to the anticipated excitement of his prom. "This year was supposed to be our year, just me and her celebrating all these moments," he lamented, the sadness of facing these milestones without her encroaching ace. "What do you think about the complexities children face when dealing with such traumatic experiences? Do you believe that time can truly heal all wounds, or do some scars remain intact? Here are two perspectives to consider. 1. Healing is always possible, and with the right support and therapy, individuals can recover from even the most traumatic events. 2. Some experiences leave a lasting impact, and although people can learn to cope, the memories and pain can last a lifetime. What is your view? As we delve deeper into the emotional and psychological effects of trauma on children, let's explore how those experiences shape their future. In another heartbreaking development, Jamaica's younger brother was shocked to learn of his sister's tragic death due to domestic violence, a fate he never thought would happen to his sister. He recalls the incidents that revealed the selfishness of Jamaica's husband Levels during his visits. "I remember one time I went to my sister's house and Levels walked in with food just for him. Nothing for the kids, nothing for my sister. It was clear how selfish he was. How can you, as the man of the house, come home and only bring food for yourself?" Meanwhile, Jamaica's other brother, Adrian, felt an even deeper sense of loss for having been closer to Levels than the rest of his siblings. Betrayal is personal and devastating. "I just talked to him the night before it happened. I'm speechless. Not only did he hurt my sister, he broke our whole family, our whole neighborhood. Everyone is affected. The children are hurt." Several days passed after the incident. During this time, Jamaica's family provided a lot of information to the police, but there was a notable delay in arresting the perpetrator. "It's been 3 days since the shooting and still no one has been arrested," a family member lamented. In response to press inquiries, the Houston Police Department acknowledged their ongoing efforts but confirmed that no arrests had been made. Typically, journalists disseminate information about suspects on various media platforms, assisting local people in identifying and reporting them, thereby assisting law enforcement agencies. However, in this case, police have not yet officially identified the suspect known as Levels, restricting the media from mentioning his name. On November 14th, a profound prayer was held in Jamaica's memory. Attended by her friends, family, colleagues, and sympathizers, the gathering was marked by the presence of pink and white balloons. Those gathered reflected on their fond memories of Jamaica, prayed for her soul, and concluded the gathering by releasing balloons into the sky. Ghosts and broken hearts dominated the scene at the Missouri City driveway, formerly a crime scene. A week after the tragedy, a reporter spoke to Jamaica's father, who was present at the devastating event. He expressed his deep sadness. "Our family is injured. She is the piece of the puzzle that we are missing." As a father, the pain of having to bury his child is immense, but he knows he must be resilient. Her father, still in disbelief, shared, "God, I feel so broken, but I'm trying to get better for her and our family's sake." In another conversation, the reporter spoke to Jamaica's sister, who was also present at the scene. Concerned about the ongoing investigation, she expressed her concern that no arrests have been made. She feared for her safety and that of Jamaica's children when she learned that the perpetrator knew his whereabouts. "If he seeks revenge, all he has to do is show up with a gun and shoot anyone he sees. He has nothing to lose, but we have everything to lose," she said, emphasizing the fear that the attacker was armed and dangerous. "Know where they all live." Now here's a question to ponder. What should the government prioritize in this situation? Should they focus on ensuring the family's security or on apprehending the perpetrator? The government needs to ensure special security for the family because the perpetrator can return at any time and threaten the family. Moreover, he also had a gun in his hand. The authorities need to strengthen their investigation of the perpetrator's traces. Otherwise, arrest will become more and more difficult. Share your thoughts and discuss steps that can ensure both justice and safety. Next, we'll explore how communities are responding to this crisis. In the heartbreaking aftermath of Jamaica's tragic death, the community gathered on November 26, 2023 to pay tribute to a life cut short by violence. Friends, family, neighbors, and local officials gathered to honor her, echoing sentiments of forgiveness and kindness despite the pain that engulfed her. Let us be kind and compassionate to each other, letting go of all bitterness, anger, and conflict with God's word, they declared in the solemn ceremony. To cope with the financial stress caused by funeral expenses, Jamaica's family started a GoFundMe, amassing more than $122,000, a complete contrast to their original goal of $10,000. The image of her mother's wounded face and her fading eyes as life gradually faded from the earth haunted her children. The trauma of having her last image lying there is deeply ingrained in their memories, a family spokesman lamented. The severity of this tragedy is compounded by the fact that the alleged perpetrator was not a stranger, but someone Jamaica and her children knew well, which only added to the horror for their challenge. Meanwhile, Christopher Levels, Jamaica's boyfriend and the suspected gunman, remains elusive as of June 2024. Despite a $30,000 reward posted by Houston police for information leading to an arrest holding him, Levels continued to elude capture. The community response was enthusiastic. Social media campaigns and personal pleas aimed to tighten the net around Levels, ensuring he cannot escape justice. Jamaica's younger sister, who is especially close to her, is grappling with a deep void. The daily conversations of the past are now memories that she clings to. I feel torn. My sister is not only my sister, but also my best friend. We have shared everything from morning chats to funny Instagram posts. Now it's like living in a nightmare that I can't wake up from, she shared, voice full of sadness. Shifting our focus to a broader issue, have you noticed a recent alarming increase in domestic violence cases in Houston? Recently, city leaders convened to closely review the latest figures related to these sad events. Their findings revealed a clear reality. Nearly 18% of all reported homicides in the city were related to domestic violence. This number increases five-fold in homes with guns. What do you think about this? Let's dig deeper and explore how these factors contribute to the worrying trend. In a powerful message to women enduring abusive relationships, Jamaica's sister urged them to seize the opportunity to escape before it's too late. She passionately advises leaving at the first sign of abuse, whether it's threats, isolation from loved ones, or physical confinement. For girls, I tell you that they will hurt you, they will kill you. They don't want to see you with anyone else. I would say leave after the first sign. Domestic abuse persists when the victim tolerates their abuser's behavior, often escalating the level of abuse over time. This can range from physical abuse to verbal abuse, the latter of which can also cause significant mental and emotional harm. Jamaica's story adds to the countless domestic violence cases recorded every year. While law enforcement has improved laws and support systems to help victims safely leave these relationships, ultimately the decision to leave must come from the victim themselves. If you or someone you know is struggling with the decision to leave an abusive partner, whether due to verbal or physical abuse, it is important to discuss the situation with law enforcement authorities or domestic violence support organizations before choosing to stay. Being informed can help resolve and potentially reduce the prevalence of these traumatic situations. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe that Levels had a premeditated plan to harm Jamaica, or was his drastic action just a spur-of-the-moment decision? Could your neighbor be hiding a scary secret? At the art haven of the Tannery Arts Center, Santa Cruz, the unthinkable happened. 8-year-old Maddie Middleton disappeared right under the watchful eyes of a close-knit community. As the night turns on a frantic search, a shocking discovery in a recycling bin turns a missing children case into a chilling murder investigation. What secrets did the investigation uncover? Join the discussion and explore the depths of this tragic mystery. On the evening of July 26, 2015, at exactly 6:08 p.m., An emergency call to 911 rang out from an apartment complex in Santa Cruz, California. The urgency in the caller's voice showed the severity of the situation. Her daughter had disappeared. The mother, overwhelmed with worry, reported that her daughter, Madison Middleton, was last seen driving a toy car around their apartment complex shortly after 5 p.m. She gave officers all the details. Maddie is 8 years old, 4 feet tall, weighs about 48 pounds, has brown hair, and was last seen wearing a black helmet and purple dress, riding in his small white car. The community of residents there also went on a frantic search to find the girl who disappeared after just a few minutes. Madison Middleton, affectionately known as Maddie, lives with her parents, Laura and Michael, at the Tannery Arts Center apartment complex. This unique housing development serves families and artists, providing them with affordable living spaces where creativity and community are closely intertwined. Maddie is a young girl who thrives in this vibrant atmosphere, surrounded by young artists and supportive adults. The complex is more than just a row of apartments. It's a close-knit community where people know each other and share creative endeavors. Here, people like Maddie are often seen playing together and exploring their passion for art. For someone like Maddie, who has a deep love for all things art, this place is like a paradise. She is often involved in drawing small toy animals and creating elaborate stories and plays with them. According to her mother Laura, Maddie's generosity knew no bounds. She is always ready to help or stand up for those who feel alone or in need. Known for her bright, intuitive nature and ever-present smile, Maddie is the heart of the place. Her cheerful way of speaking makes her a beloved figure among her neighbors. Immediately after the girl went missing, the police took quick action. They immediately went to the scene to conduct a thorough search. Maddie is known for her confidence and awareness, so her parents make sure she doesn't wander around alone or hang out with strangers. This makes her sudden disappearance especially alarming and unusual. Despite the severity of the situation, an Amber Alert was not issued because the situation did not meet the specific criteria required for such an alert. Amber Alert is an emergency alert system that sends information about a child at risk of life-threatening danger, such as missing or kidnapped. Before she disappeared, Maddie played board games with her mother and a friend. While playing together, Maddie decided to take her new little car, a recent gift that she loved, for a spin in the yard as dusk approached. The last time she was officially seen by some neighbors was at 5 p.m., happily walking around. Maddie seemed immersed in nature, occasionally stopping to chat with other children but mostly enjoying her own space. The last confirmed sighting was at 5:07 p.m. near the mailbox. Then she simply disappeared. Her mother suspected she might have been with another friend and began a frantic search, knocking on about 100 apartment doors in the 8-acre complex. But as each resident reported that they hadn't seen Maddie, the sense of panic deepened. An extensive search operation was conducted, involving the Santa Cruz Police Department, the Santa Cruz Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue Team, and a canine unit. However, it quickly became dark and they found nothing. By 11 a.m. the next day, 50 FBI agents had joined the effort, going door to door, urging people to check their garages, trash cans, gardens, and sheds. The entire complex has been meticulously searched, and now the search for Maddie has expanded to the surrounding areas. Early the next morning at a press conference, Santa Cruz police announced they had expanded the search for the missing 8-year-old girl to cover an additional 4.5 square miles. The FBI was also called in to assist, providing additional resources. Search teams wearing orange jackets are now combing a wider area of Santa Cruz, hoping to find any trace of Madison Middleton. The resident community there also immediately sprang into action to assist in the search, spending the entire night searching the area without success. One person who searched there said, "We're all feeling a bit helpless at this point. We've been checking all the tents and homeless camps. Many of us we stayed up all night. We even went as far as Paradise Park." As for the police, they found no evidence that Maddie was raped, so they are considering this a missing person case. At this stage, we do not consider this a kidnapping. There is still a stage. The first part of the investigation, we consider this a search for a lost child. The local community came together to find her quickly, with neighbors actively participating in the search. Described as a cute child, Maddie's sudden disappearance has made the community suspicious. "It's confusing, she was just right here," a neighbor expressed, trying to grasp the situation. One parent shared, "It's so tragic, I told my son to keep hoping. We all sent our best positive thoughts, hoping he would return safely. safe and sound. Later in the afternoon, the search intensified as police began stopping vehicles entering the tannery car park, gathering any clues to Madison Middleton's whereabouts. As the search approached the 24-hour mark, the police decided to narrow the focus because they believed the answer must lie in the apartment complex due to the short time Maddie had been missing. They began to detail and enhance the buildings, hoping to find something left over from the initial efforts. But the sad thing is that just over a day later, the search ended suddenly at 8 p.m. on July 27th. Maddie's body was discovered in a recycling bin inside the first-floor garage of the apartment complex, hidden in a bag. This discovery has changed the search landscape significantly. The search for the lost child has become a major murder investigation. Soon after, police arrested a 15-year-old boy from the same apartment complex suspected of being involved in the disappearance and apparent death of an 8-year-old girl. The suspect was arrested last night, his identity withheld to ensure privacy. A further investigation of the complex led to a second, more thorough search by a Santa Cruz police detective, who found Maddie's body hidden in a barely visible trash can, located in a parking lot enclosure at the Tannery Arts Center complex. The case of Madison Milton's tragic death unfolded with profound sadness and meticulous investigation by the Santa Cruz Police Department. He was arrested for Madison's murder, and evidence found at his residence directly linked him to this horrific act. It appears that Madison was lured into the suspect's apartment voluntarily, where she was brutally murdered. The investigation agency confirmed that he acted alone, without any accomplices. Initially protected due to his age, the teen's identity was not revealed until Santa Cruz District Court Jeff Roselle declared there was enough evidence to charge him as an adult with murder, arresting him, kidnapping, and sexual assault. This decision is supported by the law determines the severity of the charge based on the nature of the crime. The subsequent revelation that Adrian Jerry Gonzalez, affectionately known as AJ, was the suspect shocked the community. Having lived in the apartment with his mother for 6 years, AJ is a familiar face, known for his yo-yo games and piano lessons with local children. Described as affable and polite, the discovery of his involvement was incomprehensible to neighbors who knew him as a trustworthy and exemplary figure. However, darker aspects of AJ's personality appear on his social media, hinting at a troubled mind. Past incidents such as animal abuse and alarming threats have suggested deeper problems. His close observation of police during the investigation and his suddenness as detectives approached caused immediate alarm. Evidence collected from his apartment has not yet been released, possibly restricted due to legal protections for minors, but it's clear that AJ has secrets he intends to keep hidden. The following analysis of Maddie's case reveals a tragic series of events. She was gagged with tape, assaulted, and then murdered, reflecting a deeply disturbing crime. After being arrested, AJ confessed to the brutal act. He details how he lured Maddie into his apartment with the promise of ice cream. Familiar and trusting of AJ, Maddie was caught off guard when he attacked her from behind. After immobilizing and assaulting her, he strangled her and put her in his pocket. As he disposed of the body, he realized Maddie was still alive and fatally stabbed her in the neck. An autopsy confirmed she died of asphyxiation due to the position she was placed in the recycling bin. District Attorney Jeff Roselle announced his resolute determination to ensure justice, declaring AJ faces life in prison. He supported AJ's trial as an adult, emphasizing the severity of his actions. Judge Salazar concurred, pointing to Proposition 57, which gives judges discretion to try minors as adults in serious cases. Despite AJ's plea of innocence, his attorney pushed for a transfer to juvenile court, citing Senate Bill 1391, which protects 14 to 15-year-olds from being tried for detention for adults. They claim AJ's actions were influenced by a challenging upbringing and social awkwardness, a claim disputed by those who knew his family well. They portray a loving environment where AJ's mother, Reggie, prioritized her children despite past difficulties with violence, drugs, and alcohol. So to say that using his mother and his upbringing as some kind of justification for what he did is not fair at all. The community response was intense. Many people signed a petition opposing the application of Bill 1391 to AJ's case, but the Supreme Court ultimately ruled to transfer it to juvenile court, sparking widespread debate. Do you think AJ's difficult personal circumstances justified his actions? AJ's severity should be transferred to juvenile court. Option 1. By placing him in the juvenile court system, we can create an environment that helps him realize his mistakes and change his behavior. This is not only a way to help AJ, but also a way to reduce the risk of reoffending in the future. Option 2. Even though AJ is young, his behavior shows danger and a lack of compassion. Trying him as an adult is not only a way to punish, but also a way to protect society. Such acts need to be responded to harshly to create a strong message that serious crimes will not be tolerated. What do you think? Join the discussion below and let us know your views as we continue to explore the complexities of this heartbreaking case. Today in court, Gonzalez admitted to all charges, including the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Maddie, more than 5 years after the crime. As the sentencing date approached, Gonzalez expressed hope that one day he would join the family. Maddie's family can forgive you. There is little I can say after all the pain and suffering I have caused. My goal is to solve my problem so no one else has to endure what you are experiencing. I know it doesn't change the fact that I brought this tragic loss and devastation upon you, but I hope that as I seek forgiveness for my actions, you can accept my words. My apologies, he said. Maddie's father, Michael, shared that he has accepted his daughter's loss and has forgiven Gonzalez. It doesn't make things easier, but it allows me to find peace. Embracing the darkness will only destroy my soul. Forgiveness is the only path forward, and I believe Madison would agree, he said. Maddie's mother, Laura, noted that her daughter's death sent her into a state of depression, filled with anxiety and post-traumatic stress, which left her unable to work. Even AJ's attorney expressed relief as the trial date neared, hoping the Middleton family wouldn't have to endure more than they already had through the adult court system. Meanwhile, AJ faces a sentence of 126 years to life in prison. However, the juvenile court system has charted a very different path. Onlookers gathered outside the Santa Cruz County Courthouse today to protest the sentencing under California law, which stipulates that Gonzalez, who was 15 at the time of the crime and nearly 16, can be released due just 4 years later at the age of 25. Judge Salazar imposed the maximum sentence allowed under current law, which stipulates that AJ's confinement ends when he turns 25 in October 2024. However, there are no guarantees for his release follows, as the court could petition for an extension of his time, although District Attorney Jeff Roselle pessimistically believes that is unlikely. Some child psychologists say Gonzalez is unlike anyone they have met in his 30-year career, suggesting that releasing him at age the 25th of May also have been a sex offender mistake. Maddie's grandfather, Dan, claimed that the verdict ignored all evidence that he posed a danger to society. He also predicted that Bill 1391 would have serious consequences for future cases. He said, "It is scary that this law could be enacted in 2025. It will not only affect my family and our community here, but anyone else who could become a victim of crime evil at the hands of a criminal." A deep bond was formed between Laura and AJ's mother, Reggie, during this challenging time. Reggie broke down, trying to understand how his son could do this. Neighbors often saw her in tears at Maddie's memorial service. Laura would sit beside her, comfort her, assure her that she was not at fault. Laura said that Maddie was the light and love of her life, bringing immense joy to many people. She grew up to be a beautiful, bubbly, cheerful, and generous-hearted girl. Her charm and intelligence are undeniable, and her creativity shines brightly, especially in her love of art and animals. She has a special love for dogs and wolves and is very funny. Madison is fearless, confidently standing next to adults, never threatened by anything. She was stunningly beautiful and deeply loved. Sadly, she is no longer with us, but I know she will always be the perfect 8-year-old in my heart, and I miss her so much. The heartbreaking truth is that we both lost our children that day. To commemorate her love for wolves, a sound sculpture of a wolf was created on the beach near her home. The Rio Theater displays her name prominently on the outside, and paintings by local artists decorate various locations. A celebration of life was held where hundreds of people gathered, and Mayor Don Lane commemorated her life by declaring October 5th, 2015, Madison Middleton Day, which was also her birthday. In response to this tragedy, the family founded MCASC, Maddie's Little Angels of Santa Cruz. Their motto, "Before you go, let someone know," aims to educate children and parents about safety and protection. The Tanning Arts Center, where the community once felt so close and safe, has never been the same and may never be the same. What do you think about the community's reaction to an event so tragic? What more can be done to protect and honor the memory of lost loved ones? As we wrap up on the tragic case of Madison Middleton, let's take a moment to reflect on the important lessons it teaches us about criminal behavior, law enforcement procedures, and important safety measures. This story not only recounts the heartbreaking events that took place in Santa Cruz, it serves as a powerful reminder of the unpredictability of human actions and the profound impacts they can have on communities.